You've heard whispers of the old Republic, of Jedi and Sith locked in endless war, of empires rising and burning to ash. But what if I told you the Republic was never as strong as it seemed? That beneath the banners of peace lurked betrayal, secrets, and a darkness older than the stars themselves. Tonight, we're unraveling the entire story of the old Republic, and you'll never see it the same way again. So sit back, relax with a snack, and let your imagination wander through the galaxy. And remember, if you enjoyed this journey, subscribe, because the story of Star Wars has only just begun. You open your eyes to a galaxy that is still young. The stars are not yet crowded with empires, not yet scarred by fleets of durasteel and fire. They hang like jewels scattered across an infinite ocean, each one untouched, each one carrying the silence of eternity. There is no republic yet, no Senate chambers echoing with voices, no Jedi Council presiding over the will of the Force. There are only scattered worlds, fragile and isolated, each one clutching at survival, as if the darkness of space itself might swallow them whole. You feel the thinness of it all, the delicacy of a galaxy that does not yet know itself. The air on these first worlds carries a strange stillness, like the morning before a storm. You can smell the iron tang of fresh-forged tools, hear the creak of wooden ships crossing seas under alien skies, feel the weight of societies that are only beginning to imagine what lies beyond their horizon. You walk among them, unseen but present, and you feel their hunger for more. Primitive starships made from scrap and imagination break atmosphere with engines that groan like wounded animals. Pilots peer into the void with eyes filled with terror and wonder, hearts beating against the walls of their chests as they see for the first time the endless black between stars. You hear them whisper prayers to whatever gods their worlds remember, voices shaking as they ask to come home alive. They do not know it yet, but their journeys will stitch the galaxy together, thread by thread, until something greater is born. And you can sense it, the faint heartbeat of unity, still small, still fragile, but echoing louder with each passing decade. But for every hopeful spark, there is a shadow that grows. Not all voices call for peace. Some worlds sharpen their blades instead of raising their banners. They see the stars not as a frontier to be shared, but as a battlefield waiting to be claimed. You feel their ambition like fire under your feet, the heat of leaders who speak in promises of conquest, who convince their people that the void belongs only to the strong. They forge fleets not to explore, but to invade. And already the first wars beyond the sky have begun. You can almost hear them, the hiss of primitive blasters, the crash of steel against steel, the screams of soldiers as their bodies are cast adrift into the endless abyss. In the silence between battles, something older stirs. The Force breathes across the stars like wind through tall grass, unseen yet undeniable. You can feel it even now, a rhythm, a current binding all life together. For some, it manifests as visions, dreams of light dancing on the edge of consciousness. For others, it arrives as whispers, voices that do not belong to any living being, yet cannot be denied. Farmers wake in the middle of the night with knowledge of storms before they come. Warriors move with impossible precision, striking at the exact moment their enemies falter. And children, small, fragile, unknowing children, lift stones without touching them, eyes wide with wonder, as if the universe itself bends to their will. You stand among them, and you realize, this is the beginning of something greater than civilization, greater than politics, greater than war. This is the birth of the Jedi. But not yet, not fully, not as you know them. In these early days, those who hear the whispers are feared, shunned, or worshipped as prophets. On some worlds they are burned, accused of consorting with demons. On others they are crowned kings, their power mistaken for divine blessing. You feel their isolation, the loneliness of carrying a gift that no one understands, the ache of being feared for something you cannot control. And you wonder, how many of them fall into despair? How many of them, hated and hunted, turn their gifts into weapons not of peace, but of vengeance? You begin to understand that the Force is not light or dark. It is simply power, and power always demands a choice. The galaxy begins to awaken. More and more voices rise, calling for something greater than isolated kingdoms. Traders cross the stars, their ships heavy with spices, minerals, and knowledge. You hear the first treaties spoken, the first alliances forged. A dream takes shape, the dream of unity, of a republic where many become one. It is a fragile dream, as fragile as a candle flame carried through the wind. You can see the dangers already. Senators-to-be squabble like children over who will lead. Worlds bicker over borders and tariffs, greed dripping from their voices. Yet beneath the chaos, something stronger persists, the belief that peace is possible. That maybe, just maybe, the galaxy can be more than endless war. Still, in the corners where light does not reach, shadows coil tighter. You hear them in forgotten temples, carved into stone walls with symbols older than memory. You feel them in the presence of beings who do not seek peace but domination. The dark side of the Force has its own disciples, whisperers who see unity not as salvation but as opportunity. To them, the galaxy is not a dream waiting to be shared, but a throne waiting to be claimed. They are few, scattered, their teachings forbidden, but already their hunger is growing. You can hear the first murmurs of what will one day be called the Sith. The galaxy does not notice, not yet. Its attention is on the miracle of survival, the miracle of expansion. You drift through orbit around new settled worlds, watching the glitter of cities rise like constellations upon their surfaces. The hum of engines fills the void, the laughter of explorers drifts across comm channels, the air tastes of possibility. You cannot deny the beauty of it, the hope of it. For the first time in countless millennia, civilizations are not shrinking but reaching outward, daring to believe in tomorrow. Yet you know what they do not, that every dawn carries its own dusk, that every rise casts a longer shadow. And already, that shadow is spreading. You linger on one world, a simple place of forests and rivers, where a young child sits beside a fire. The flames crackle, and you smell the smoke rising into the night sky. The child closes their eyes, and the fire bends, curling as if answering their unspoken thought. Their parents gasp, torn between awe and terror. You feel the tension, the fear that this gift is a curse, the hope that it is a blessing. You know this child's fate will echo across centuries. Will they be found by others like them? Will they be taught to wield the power for good? Or will fear drive them into darkness? The question hangs, unanswered, suspended in the silence of the night. Everywhere, across 1,000 stars, similar moments are happening. Little sparks igniting in the darkness, little whispers carried by the Force. And though no one realizes it yet, though no one dares to speak it aloud, you know what it means. The galaxy is waking up. A storm is coming, one that will shape destiny itself. And as you drift into the void, the stars around you seem to pulse like beating hearts, as if they too are whispering. You lean closer, straining to hear, and in that silence you finally understand the truth. Peace is not the default state of the galaxy. Peace is the fragile dream, conflict is the reality. And though dawn has come, you feel in your bones the first chill of night. The whispers grow louder. You can no longer tell if they come from the Force, from the stars, or from within yourself. They call you forward, urging you deeper into the story. And with every word, every breath, you feel it building. The promise of unity, the certainty of betrayal, the inevitability of war. You realize that this dawn will not last. Something is stirring, something vast, something ancient. You cannot see it yet, but you can feel its shadow stretching across the stars. And that is where you stand now, at the edge of the beginning, caught between hope and fear, listening to whispers before dawn. You wonder what tomorrow will bring. You wonder who will rise, who will fall, who will burn, and who will endure. And though the galaxy does not yet know it, you know the truth. The story has already begun. Tomorrow, the flame will spread. Tomorrow, the galaxy will awaken. Tomorrow, the Jedi will rise. But tonight, the shadows are still watching. You stand at the threshold of history, the galaxy has stirred from its slumber, and you feel it like the crackle of fire spreading through dry grass. Where there was once silence and isolation, now there is motion, fleets rising, voices gathering, banners unfurling under alien suns. You smell the smoke of forges hammering ships into existence, the tang of ozone from engines warming in hangars, the sweat of leaders who know they are stepping into something larger than themselves. The Republic is not yet a monument, it is still only an idea, fragile, flickering, trembling like a candle flame against the winds of chaos. But you can sense it, you can hear it, the first heartbeat of unity. The old Republic is about to be born. You drift into the great chamber of Coruscant, though it does not yet shine as you remember it in later centuries. The spires of Durasteel do not yet scrape the stars, the skylanes are not yet endless rivers of light. It is younger, raw, filled with stone foundations and half-built towers. Yet even now it hums with destiny. The Senate chamber is alive, echoing with languages from 1,000 worlds, some harsh, some melodic, some like whispers of wind. You can taste the tension in the air, thick, electric, like lightning about to strike. Banners are raised, cloth snapping in unseen breezes, colors blending into a chaotic tapestry of hope. And as you watch, you realize something. These beings do not trust each other. Not truly. Behind every handshake lies suspicion. Behind every smile lurks fear. They have come together because they must, not because they wish to. The galaxy is too dangerous, too fractured, too filled with threats waiting to consume them. Pirates strike shipping routes like wolves on the hunt. Warlords carve empires from weaker neighbors. The memory of Sith conquests lingers like scars, unspoken yet undeniable. You feel the desperation, bleeding from the chamber. They are not here to dream, they are here to survive. One senator steps forward, their robes heavy with symbols of their world. Their voice carries across the chamber, strong and trembling at once. They speak of unity, of safety, of peace that can only exist if many worlds become one. Their words ring like the tolling of a bell, echoing deep into your bones. You feel their conviction, their fear, their hope. Others rise in response, some nodding, some shouting in protest, their voices a storm of languages crashing against each other. You realize you are witnessing not the triumph of unity, but its birth pangs, messy, painful, violent. This is no polished ideal. This is a desperate gamble, written not in faith but in necessity. And yet something extraordinary happens. Amid the chaos, amid the shouts and the accusations, a spark catches. One voice joins another, then another. The chamber does not fall silent, but it shifts. You feel it in your chest, like the air changing before rain. The Republic is not yet built, but its foundation is laid in that moment, not of stone or steel, but of fragile agreement. They sign treaties with trembling hands. They etch laws with uncertain strokes. They promise loyalty with eyes that flicker toward betrayal. But still, they do it. They bind themselves together. You stand among them as if caught in the glow of firelight. You smell the ink drying on parchment, the metallic tang of ancient datapads recording their oaths, the subtle musk of sweat rolling from bodies pressed together in anxious expectation. For the first time in galactic history, something greater than a single world, a single people, a single system is born. It is not yet perfect, it is not yet strong, but it is real. And you realize you are standing at the moment the old Republic takes its first breath. But every flame carries danger, every fire once kindled hungers for fuel. You feel it in the chamber even now, beneath the triumph and the cheers. Some voices are already whispering of power, of influence, of control over this new republic. You see eyes glinting like predators, measuring their rivals, calculating what this unity might grant them. And you understand, the republic will not only be a dream of peace, it will be a battlefield of words, a place where ambition can hide behind banners and speeches. You hear the first lies already tucked between promises, and you wonder, can something born of fear truly endure? You wander the streets outside the chamber, and the city itself reflects the uncertainty. Merchants cheer, believing new trade will make them rich. Families celebrate, dreaming of safer futures for their children. But soldiers mutter darkly, fearing they will be sent to wars not of their choosing. Criminals whisper in alleys, already plotting how to twist these new laws to their advantage. And in the shadows, those who despise unity altogether sharpen their blades, vowing to tear down this fragile order before it can take root. You hear their anger carried on the wind, and it chills you. As you drift farther, the whispers of the Force return. They slip into your ears like echoes from another time, neither light nor dark, simply truth. They tell you that unity always demands sacrifice, that peace always carries a price, and you wonder who will pay it. Will it be the leaders in their robes of silk, or the nameless soldiers, the farmers, the children whose lives will be swept into the tides of history? The whispers do not answer. They only remind you over and over that every flame eventually consumes what feeds it. The Senate reconvenes in days that follow, and you watch as the machinery of the Republic begins to grind forward. Committees form. Chart. Spurs are written. Worlds pledge fleets and soldiers, not out of loyalty but out of fear of being left behind. You can hear the arguments echoing in the vast chamber, voices clashing like blades. Yet beneath it all is a strange harmony, a fragile thread that somehow holds. You realize the Republic's greatest strength is not its laws or its fleets. It is its ability to endure in spite of its flaws. Like fire, it flickers, sputters, nearly dies, but somehow it keeps burning. You see the first Jedi approach the chamber. They are not yet the order you know, not yet cloaked in formality or bound by ancient code. They are wanderers, mystics, guardians who have heard the call of the Force and chosen to answer. Their sabers hum with quiet fire, symbols of hope in a galaxy desperate for protectors. You watch as the senators regard them with awe and unease. For some, they are saviors. For others, they are threats too powerful to trust. And you realize even here, even at the dawn of the Republic, suspicion of the Jedi is already rooted. The refrain echoes in your mind. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Outside the chamber, fleets assemble. Ships launch into the void, bearing the symbols of the Republic. For the first time, the stars do not feel like distant islands. They feel connected, bound together by treaties and patrols. Yet you cannot shake the weight pressing on your chest. For even as the Republic is born, so too are its enemies. Warlords and pirates snarl at this new unity, hidden Sith cults whisper of opportunity, and deep within the unknown regions, something older still watches, patient and silent. The flame has been kindled. You can feel its warmth, its promise, its hope, but you can also feel the heat of its hunger. It will spread, it will grow, and it will consume. The galaxy has chosen a path, but the destination is hidden in shadow. You are left standing in the chamber as the senators cheer, their voices rising like thunder, their banners waving like storm-tossed seas. And though the sound shakes the air, though the fire burns bright, you cannot escape the truth pressing into your bones. You know this fire will not stay controlled. You know it will blaze out of control until the galaxy itself is caught in its flames. And as the cheers echo into silence, you hear a whisper, soft, sharp, unmistakable. A voice not from the chamber, not from the senators, but from the shadows. It says, "Every flame casts a shadow." You turn toward the darkness, and for the first time you glimpse the shape of what's coming. The Republic has been born, but so too has its doom. You hear it before you see it. A low hum, sharp yet smooth, like thunder captured in a blade. It cuts through silence, through doubt, through fear itself. You turn your head, and in the shadows a figure steps forward, robes flowing, eyes steady, saber ignited. The light pours across stone and steel, across faces turned in awe, across hearts that did not know they needed hope until this very moment. And in that single hum, that single glow, you realize the galaxy has found its guardians. The Jedi have emerged, carrying their weapons not as tools of conquest, but as beacons, fire in the dark. You walk closer, drawn to the glow. It is not just a weapon. It is something alive, something humming in harmony with the hand that holds it. The saber hisses as it cuts the air, the scent of heated ozone rising in your nostrils, sharp and metallic, tingling on your tongue. The color reflects in your eyes, blue, green, golden, burning like captured stars. You cannot look away. The light promises safety, order, purpose. Yet beneath that promise is something heavier, something unspoken. Because every light, no matter how bright, deepens the shadows around it. You feel it pressing at the edges, as if the galaxy itself leans forward to whisper, "Nothing comes without cost." The Jedi walk among the people, and everywhere they go, stories follow. Farmers on distant worlds tell of robed strangers who came to settle disputes without raising a blade. Merchants speak of warriors who stood between their ships and raiders, hands raised, enemies laid low not by violence but by unseen power. Children dream of them, eyes wide as they pretend to swing invisible sabers, voices echoing with the hum of hope. And you feel it, the weight of expectation growing with every tale told. The Jedi are not just guardians, they are myth, they are legend, they are something greater than mortal. But you know the truth. Under the robes, under the code, they are still only beings, fragile, flawed, haunted, and you whisper to yourself the refrain you cannot forget. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. You close your eyes and you feel what they feel. The Force surges through them, endless and eternal, binding every living thing. It is wind in their lungs, fire in their veins, stars singing in their bones. They move with it, breathe with it, fight with it. And yet, you also sense their doubts. To hear the Force is to hear every voice, every cry, every death, every dream. To carry a saber is to carry the weight of choice. Who lives, who falls, who is saved, who is left behind. They smile for the people, but their hearts tremble in silence. They kneel in meditation, yet in the stillness, shadows creep into their thoughts. You wonder how long anyone can hold such a burden before it breaks them. The Republic welcomes them, but not without unease. Senators glance sideways at their presence in the chamber. Guardians of peace, they call them, yet their eyes linger too long on the glowing sabers at their belts. Protectors, they proclaim, but beneath their words is suspicion, the quiet fear of power that cannot be voted out, cannot be controlled by law. You stand in the Senate, and you can smell the tension, a mix of incense burning in the chamber, the sweat of nervous senators, the sharp tang of fear hidden behind honeyed words. The Jedi bow, silent, accepting their role as peacekeepers. But you can feel it, the gap widening between what they are and what the Republic wants them to be. A tool, a weapon, a leash wrapped in silk. Still, the Jedi walk forward. They travel to the farthest edges of the galaxy, carrying the light of the Republic to worlds that know only darkness. You follow them into deserts where the air tastes of dust and blood, into jungles where the canopy drips with the scent of rot and rain, into frozen wastes where the cold cuts to the bone. On every world they meet suffering, and on every world they stand against it. You feel their resolve in the way they ignite their sabers without hesitation, in the way their voices remain calm, even as blasters roar, in the way they never turn away from those who cry for help. And yet, in the silence between battles, when their sabers are dark and the stars wheel overhead, you can feel the weight pressing down upon them. They are asked to be perfect, they are asked to be more than mortal. But no one is. And then you see it. The first cracks. A Jedi stands in the aftermath of battle, their robes scorched, their saber dim. They stare at the bodies scattered across the ground, pirates, raiders, soldiers. The air smells of charred metal and blood. You can taste ash on your tongue. The Jedi whispers that it was necessary, that peace demanded this sacrifice. But you can feel their doubt clawing at the edges of their resolve. They ask themselves in silence, was this justice or vengeance? Was this the light or was it shadow? You feel their fear, that the line is thinner than anyone dares to admit. And it is here, in this silence, that the dark side begins to whisper, not with shouts, not with storms, but with soft promises. Promises of strength when peace is not enough. Promises of certainty when doubt consumes. Promises of victory when compromise fails. The Jedi resist, clinging to their code, to their unity, to the flame of their order. But you know what they do not want to admit. The stronger the light burns, the hungrier the shadow becomes. You drift through the great halls of their temples. The air smells of incense, cool stone, and burning candles. Statues rise around you, carved in honor of masters long gone, their eyes unblinking, their faces stern. Younglings sit in circles. Eyes closed, voices chanting in harmony, their small hands reaching out to stones that tremble and rise in the air. Knights kneel, in meditation, brows furrowed, the whispers of the galaxy pressing into their minds. Masters walk with slow, deliberate steps, cloaks whispering against the floor, every movement weighed with patience and caution. It is serene, it is beautiful, and yet as you stand in the silence you hear it again, that faint hum of unease, that echo of something broken. Even here in their sanctuaries, shadows linger at the edge of the light. You wonder what it would feel like to live their life, to walk into every room knowing every eye is upon you, to bear the weight of a galaxy that sees you not as a person, but as a symbol, to hold a saber that can end life in an instant, and to ask yourself every day whether you have the right to wield it. You can almost feel it pressing on your chest, heavy, suffocating. And in that moment, you whisper again the refrain, "That's why it sucked to be a Jedi." And yet, despite everything, they endure. They rise when others fall. They bring peace where none existed. They give hope where hope had been lost. You cannot deny their greatness. You cannot deny their sacrifice. But you also cannot deny the truth pressing in from all sides. The brighter their flame burns, the longer and darker their shadows stretch. You stand with them on the edge of the galaxy, sabers raised against enemies that never seem to end. And in that moment, you hear the hum of light, the hiss of blasters, the cries of the wounded, the smell of ozone and blood thick in the air. You see their eyes, calm, steady, but haunted. You know the truth now. They are the guardians of peace, yes, but they are also the bearers of endless war. They are the knights of light. But even light cannot exist without shadow, and as the battle fades, as the Jedi walk away into the silence, you feel it in your bones. The shadow is growing. You cannot see its shape yet, but you can feel its hunger pressing Sue. Loser, waiting for the moment when the light flickers, and you realize this is only the beginning. You feel it before you see it. A vibration, deep and low, rippling through the Force like the groan of a mountain before it breaks apart. It slithers beneath the light, unseen, unacknowledged, but undeniably there. You close your eyes, and the air grows heavy, thick with the scent of dust and rot, the tang of old stone kissed by damp air. Somewhere beyond the reach of the Republic's banners, beyond the warmth of Jedi sabers, something ancient stirs awake. It is not new. It has always been here, buried, waiting. Older than the Republic, older than the Jedi, older than the very stars themselves. You hear its first whisper, soft and patient. Power. You follow that whisper into the forgotten corners of the galaxy. There are worlds untouched by the Republic, worlds of black sand that cut your feet like glass, of skies that bleed red under eternal storms, of ruins carved into cliffs that no one remembers building. You step inside their shadows and feel the air tighten around you. Torches crackle on stone walls, their flames hissing, their smoke bitter on your tongue. The silence is thick, broken only by chance, low, resonant, vibrating in your bones. And as the voices rise, you realize these are no monsters. They are dreamers, scholars, priests of a power deeper than law, deeper than light. Their hunger is not crude, it is spiritual. You watch them kneel in circles, eyes closed, their voices weaving like threads of fire through the air. The Force moves here, but it is not the warm current the Jedi swim in. It is molten, raw, sharp as broken glass. When it touches you, it cuts. When it fills you, it burns. You gasp at the taste of copper on your tongue, the sting in your throat, the way it presses into your chest until you can barely breathe. And yet, you feel its allure. It promises clarity where there is doubt. It promises strength where there is weakness. It promises freedom where there are chains. It does not whisper of restraint. It roars of indulgence. The Sith rise not as shadows hiding from the sun, but as seekers who stare into the abyss and smile. You see their faces, some noble, some scarred, some beautiful, some broken. They are not unified by creed or by code, not yet. They are bound by a hunger that sings in harmony with the Force itself. They see the Jedi and their endless restraint, their vows, their walls, their chains. They see weakness disguised as morality, and they swear to shatter it. to break the Jedi's fire, to claim the galaxy as their own. Not because they are evil, but because they believe it is their destiny. You can feel the galaxy tremble as their numbers grow. In the far reaches, worlds fall under their thrall. Kings bow to their strength, armies swear fealty to their vision. You see fleets being forged in hidden shipyards, the glow of furnaces staining the night sky orange. You smell the sharp tang of molten metal, the grease on soldiers' hands as they raise weapons to the heavens. And over it all, you hear the chanting again, echoing through halls older than memory, promising war, promising fire. You wander deeper into their sanctuaries, and you see the holocrons. They hover in the air, shapes of glowing crimson, edges sharp as blades. They hum with knowledge too heavy for the mind to bear. You reach out, and for a moment you hear their voices, ancient Sith lords whispering from beyond death, their tones slick as oil, their promises sweet as honey. They tell you that life is suffering, but suffering makes you strong. They tell you that peace is a lie, but through conflict you find truth. They tell you that chains are everywhere, binding you, choking you, holding you down, but through power all chains can be broken. You pull your hand back, trembling, but you cannot unhear the words. They stick to your skin lid. Key Ash. The Sith dreamers rise, and already you see them shaping themselves into lords. They carve their names into stone with blades of red fire, their sabers humming deeper, darker than those of the Jedi. You hear their clashes in the night, training against one another, the air sizzling, the ozone biting your nose as sparks rain down on stone. They do not seek harmony, they seek dominance. They sharpen themselves against each other, believing only the strong are worthy to endure. And as you watch them fall upon one another with fury, you feel a sick realization. Their weakness is also their strength, for though they devour each other, those who survive are honed into weapons sharper than anything the Jedi can face. You stand on the edge of a cliff, overlooking one of their gathering places. The horizon is lit by fire. Statues rise, black and jagged, eyes carved into them that seem to follow you, lips twisted in eternal screams. Drums thunder below, the rhythm pounding in your chest until your heart matches it. Hundreds kneel, fists raised, their voices crying out in unison. And at their center stands a figure cloaked in black, saber burning crimson in the storm. They lift it to the sky, lightning flashing behind them, their voice booming with promises. The Jedi will fall, the Republic will crumble, and from the ashes will rise an empire of strength. The crowd roars back, the sound shaking the very stone beneath your feet. You taste blood in the back of your throat, sharp and metallic, and you realize the galaxy itself has tilted. Balance is broken, but even here, even in their triumph, you see it, the seeds of destruction. Every Sith is a master in their own mind. Every Sith believes they alone are destined to rule. You feel it in the way their eyes linger on each other's sabers, in the way their voices drip with pride and contempt. They are united by hunger, but divided by ego, and though their power grows, so too does their fragility. They will rise, like fire. But fire consumes everything, even itself. You think of the Jedi now, their light burning steady, their sabers raised for peace. You imagine their faces, calm but uncertain, watching the shadows grow. Do they feel this storm coming? Do they sense the darkness rising beyond the horizon? Or are they blind, wrapped in faith that their flame can hold back the night? You know the truth, even if they do not. Every light casts a shadow. Every flame summons the dark. And the greater their order grows, the hungrier the Sith will become. You walk back into the void, stars spinning above you, and you feel the galaxy trembling under your feet. The Sith are not monsters hiding under the bed. They are dreamers staring into eternity. They are the other half of the Force, the half no one dares to look at. And they are rising. You whisper it to yourself as you drift deeper into the dark. This is why it sucked to be a Jedi. For while the Jedi carry the burden of restraint, the Sith embrace freedom in its most terrible form. And freedom, unchained, can shatter worlds. The hum of their sabers still rings in your ears, lower, heavier, like thunder rolling across endless plains. You see their ships launching into the void, black against the stars, engines howling like predators. You hear the chants echoing even as you leave, their words burned into your mind, promising war, promising vengeance, promising eternity. You realize the galaxy has changed, the balance is broken, the war has already begun. And as you drift into silence, one final image burns itself into your vision. A single figure standing alone in the shadows, their eyes glowing faintly yellow, their face hidden beneath a hood. They do not shout. They do not raise their saber. They simply watch, waiting, patient. And in that stillness, you know, this is no fleeting rebellion. This is no minor threat. This is the beginning of something endless. The darkness is older than stars, and it has only just begun to rise. The first sound you hear is screaming. Not words, not voices calling out names, but the raw, broken cry of thousands caught in the fire of a galaxy tearing itself apart. The air tastes of metal and smoke, sharp against your tongue, burning your throat as you try to breathe. Your ears ring with the thunder of engines, the shriek of blasters, the crackling hiss of sabers colliding in the dark. You open your eyes, and the sky is split in half by fire. Fleets blot out the stars, warships vomiting streaks of light like veins of molten steel ripping across the void. Everywhere you look, you see destruction, cities reduced to rubble, oceans boiled into steam, forests stripped down to ash. Peace is no longer a dream. It is a memory, a fragile, delicate thing already slipping through your fingers. You stand on the ruins of a world caught between titans. Beneath your boots, the ground still radiates heat from bombardment, the soil blackened into glass that crunches under your steps. The smell of burning flesh carries on the wind, mingled with the acrid sting of fuel and the choking smoke of fallen towers. You look to the horizon and see the silhouettes of soldiers marching in lines so long they vanish into the haze. Banners snap in the wind, crimson for the Sith, shining blue and gold for the Republic. Their colors are bold, but the faces beneath the helmets are hollow. They march because they must, not because they believe. And in that emptiness, you feel the weight of what has begun. This is not a war of weeks, not a war of months. This is a war that will drag entire generations into the dirt. Above you, starships clash in the heavens. Their shadows crawl across the battlefield, massive and indifferent, like gods waging their private duel while mortals scatter below. You hear the boom of turbolasers, the shriek of fighters diving low, their engines rattling your bones as they streak overhead. Each explosion rocks the ground, sending shudders up your spine, and for a moment you swear the galaxy itself groans. You tilt your head back to see streaks of flame falling from orbit, frigates, transports, whole carriers splitting apart, their metal skeletons lit from within as they plummet into the atmosphere. They burn so brightly they look like new stars, but when they hit the ground, they birth only more fire, more death, more ruin. You walk among the soldiers and you see the faces of the Jedi. Their sabers hum with light, blades like lighthouses in the storm, guiding those around them. They speak of courage, of honor, of holding the line. Their voices are steady, but when you look into their eyes, you see something else. Doubt, fear, weariness. They are peacekeepers forced into the role of generals, and every order they give weighs heavier than the last. A flick of their hand sends men to die. A choice in the moment reshapes entire worlds, and though they stand tall, their shoulders carry the burden of a galaxy unraveling. This is why it sucked to be a Jedi. To believe in peace, yet live in war. To fight with fire while knowing that every flame cast a longer shadow. The Sith strike like predators. They descend in storms of crimson, their sabers burning brighter, darker, heavier than the Jedi's. You feel the heat when their blades cross, sparks sizzling as they clash, the ozone sharp in your nostrils. They fight not with restraint, but with fury, each strike a hammer, each movement a declaration of hunger. You watch one cut through a line of Republic troops, armor hissing as it melts, screams cutting off in an instant. His laughter echoes in your ears, wild and sharp, and in that moment you realize they are not here to win peace. They are here to dominate, to break, to crush, to consume. And yet, when you see the fire in their eyes, the raw devotion in their faces, you cannot help but understand why soldiers follow them. For the Sith promise something the Jedi never can: freedom without chains. The war spreads. Systems that once thrived on trade and art now choke on ash. You see Naboo's green plains churned into mud by trenches, Alderaan's towers crumbling under fire, Dantooine's fields scorched until nothing grows. The galaxy itself becomes a map of scars. You walk through camps of refugees, their eyes hollow, their lips cracked from thirst, their bodies trembling from hunger. Children cry in the night, their voices thin, their futures already stolen. Every planet you step onto feels the same, the smell of loss, the silence of absence, the ache of something precious that will never return. You whisper to yourself that peace is gone, not lost, not stolen, gone, and it will not come back. You close your eyes, and the war does not stop. It echoes behind your eyelids. You see it in visions, fleets locking in orbit, sabers igniting in ancient temples, Sith and Jedi dueling across bridges of molten rock. You hear the clatter of durasteel against durasteel, the howl of ships breaking apart, the steady drip of blood into mud. You feel the ground shake beneath your feet as bombs fall, sending vibrations through your chest like the beat of a war drum that never ends. And through it all, you cannot escape the thought, this war will never end. Not truly, not even if one side wins. But as you walk through the flames, you notice something else. Whispers, rumors. A sense that beneath the chaos, darker games are being played. The Republic fights to survive, but its senators bicker, its generals squabble, its leaders weigh lives against politics. You see their smiles in the Senate chambers, bright and false, Then as blood soaks the soil of the worlds they claim to protect. And in the shadows, the Sith are no more unified. They betray one another in secret, each clawing for dominance, each plotting for the throne. The war is not just a clash of armies. It is a stage, and behind the curtains, unseen hands pull strings that will strangle the galaxy. You wander to the heart of one battlefield, and there the force swells so thick it nearly crushes you. Jedi and Sith collide in a dance of light and shadow, sabers humming, sparks hissing in the air. Each movement is poetry written in fire. You smell ozone, your ears filled with the roar of power, your chest pounding in rhythm with every clash. The ground cracks beneath their feet, stones levitating, air shuddering as if reality itself strains under their fury. And in that storm, you feel it. Hope, despair, hunger, fear, all colliding, all bleeding together until you cannot tell where the Jedi end and the Sith begin. The war has blurred the lines. Light and dark have tangled into one endless night. And then, silence. A lull, brief as a heartbeat. You look around and see the aftermath. A Jedi kneels, saber extinguished, his hands pressed into the dirt, his face streaked with tears. A Sith lies nearby, cloak smoldering, eyes staring sightlessly into the void. Around them, soldiers of both sides lie broken, their blood soaking into the soil. You realize, in this quiet, that the war has not created victors, only survivors. The galaxy burns, and those who live carry scars deeper than flesh. This is the first great war. It is not noble, it is not clean, it is not righteous. It is a scar carved across every star system, every life, every heart, and it will not be forgotten. You whisper the refrain to yourself, the truth that rings louder with every moment. This is why it sucked to be a Jedi, to be a keeper of peace in a galaxy that only knows war. To stand in the ruins of shattered planets, knowing that nothing you do can ever bring back what has been lost. But as you lift your gaze to the burning sky, you sense something worse, something beyond the war, beyond the battles, beyond the blood. You feel a hunger not of armies, but of empires, a vision of chains not broken, but reforged into something larger, something eternal. And though you cannot yet see its shape, you know the truth. This war is only the beginning. The flames roar louder, the stars vanish behind smoke, and in that endless night you hear the sound of something approaching. Not the clatter of soldiers, not the hum of sabers, something colder, more patient, more inevitable. You whisper the words as the darkness closes in. The Sith will not stop with war. They will build an empire. And as the battlefield fades from your sight, you feel the cliff beneath your feet give way. The ground falls, the fire rises, and you tumble into the next chapter of the story. The silence after war is not peace, it is emptiness. You stand among the ruins of worlds left hollow, listening to the wind sweep through the bones of fallen cities. The air is dry, tasting of dust and rusted metal, the stench of fire long since burned out, but never gone. The first great war has ended, or so they tell you, but the galaxy feels no lighter. The Republic limps forward, banners raised high but fraying at the edges. The Jedi bow their heads, sabers clipped to their belts, their lips whispering prayers of balance. And the Sith are gone, vanished. Not slain, not defeated, simply gone. Like smoke carried into the dark by a wind you cannot see. They say the Sith are extinct. You know better. You close your eyes, and the Force still hums with their echo. It is faint, like a memory pressed into the fabric of reality, but it is there. A scar you can feel, but not heal. The galaxy dares to believe the nightmare is over, that the fire has finally burned itself out, but you taste the lie in the air. It is sweet, like spoiled fruit, something rotten beneath the surface. Because darkness does not die. It retreats. It coils back into the shadows, patient, watching, waiting for the moment when the galaxy grows soft again. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. You are never allowed to rest. You wander to the edges of known space, to worlds marked as dangerous, uncharted, forgotten. The Republic does not come here. The Jedi do not linger here. And yet here is where the whispers gather. You feel them at the edge of your hearing, soft and sly, like voices pressed against a locked door. The unknown regions stretch out before you. Black space, twisted space, filled with storms of radiation and gravity wells that swallow ships whole. You see charts drawn by explorers, ink smeared with desperation, warnings scrawled in trembling hands. Do not enter, do not return, but you can. Now this is where the Sith have gone, into the places no one dares to follow, into exile, yes, but exile is not defeat. In your mind you follow them. You picture their fleets broken, their lords scattered, their temples crumbling to ash, but even in ruin, the Sith endure. You see them gathering in hidden sanctuaries carved into asteroids, their cloaks torn but their eyes burning brighter than ever. You hear their voices chanting in the dark, swearing vengeance, swearing eternity. You smell the musk of sweat, the iron of blood, the smoke of dying fires as they duel one another, culling the weak, sharpening the strong. Their exile becomes their crucible, their loss becomes their fire. And in their silence, they do not wither, they grow. The Republic does not feel this. The Senate fills with chatter, senators fat with self-importance, arguing over credits while children starve in the shadow of ruined planets. You walk through their halls and hear the laughter, the hollow toasts, the clinking of glasses as if the war never happened. The Jedi warned them to remain vigilant, but the Senate has already convinced itself the Sith are gone. The word extinct rolls off their tongues with smug certainty, a shield against fear. And so, the galaxy drifts back into its illusions of safety, blind to the truth pulsing in the dark. You feel the truth every time you close your eyes. In the Force, the Sith are not gone. They are a pressure behind your temples, a hum in your chest, a storm brewing on the horizon. Sometimes, when the night is still, you swear you can hear them breathe. Sometimes, in the corner of your vision, you see the flicker of crimson light. They are out there, in exile, licking their wounds, stitching their strength back together with threads of hatred and patience. The galaxy has given them the one thing they never had before: time. You imagine their return. You see fleets rising again from the unknown regions, black hulls glistening like predators in the starlight. You hear the thunder of engines tearing through hyperspace, a sound so loud it rattles the marrow in your bones. You smell the sharp tang of ozone as sabers ignite once more, not in scattered duels but in armies united under one banner. You taste ash on your lips as worlds fall again, this time faster, sharper, crueler than before. Because the Sith who return will not be the same Sith who vanished. They will not make the same mistakes. They will not fall to the same divisions. In exile, they will learn unity. In silence, they will find focus. And when they come back, they will come back stronger than ever. You stand at the edge of a cliff, wind tearing at your cloak, stars burning cold above you. For a moment, the galaxy is quiet. Too quiet. And then, faint from the deep black of the unknown regions, you hear it. a pulse, a heartbeat, a promise. It grows louder until it echoes through your chest, until it becomes your own heartbeat, until you cannot tell if it comes from out there or from within yourself. And with it comes the whisper, "We are not gone, we are waiting." This is why it sucked to be a Jedi, because even when your enemy disappears, you know they are still there. You know the darkness never dies. You know the war is not over, only paused. And you know that when it begins again, it will be worse. The Republic cannot see it. The people cannot feel it. But you do. You sense the galaxy tightening like a bowstring, pulled taut, trembling, waiting for the release. You know the Sith are watching, studying, letting their hunger sharpen until it cuts like a blade. You whisper to yourself in the night that peace is not peace at all. It is the inhale before the scream. And you wonder, when the scream comes, how many will be left to hear it. And then the vision strikes you. A shadow across the stars, a figure cloaked in black, eyes glowing faintly yellow, standing at the helm of a ship that pierces the void like a dagger. Around them, fleets shimmer into being, red lights burning in the dark like the eyes of predators. Their voice does not rise in fury. It is calm, patient, assured. We have returned. And in that moment, the galaxy shudders. You open your eyes, breath caught in your throat, heart hammering against your ribs. The night around you is still, but the echo of that voice lingers in your ears. The Sith are not here, not yet, but you know they will be. You know they are gathering, building, forging themselves into something unstoppable. And when they return, the Republic will not be ready. The Jedi will not be ready. You will not be ready. The silence presses in, heavier than before, and for the first time you wonder if silence itself is a weapon. Because the longer it lasts, the more it tricks you into believing in peace. And the more you believe, the more devastating the return will be. You feel the stars watching you, cold and distant, as though they too are waiting for the inevitable. And in that waiting, you sense the cliff beneath your feet crumbling, the ground falling away into the abyss. You know the fall is coming. You can already hear the scream of fire. The Sith have gone into exile. But exile is not the end. Exile is the sharpening of a blade, and soon that blade will cut through the galaxy once again. It begins with a sound. At first, it is faint, so faint you almost mistake it for the echo of your own heart. But then it grows louder, deeper, heavier, until it becomes the pounding of war drums across the void. You hear it through hyperspace. You hear it in your sleep. You hear it in the silence of ruined temples and broken halls. The galaxy whispers that the Sith are gone, but the galaxy is wrong, because before the Sith return, before their shadow falls again, another storm rises, and it does not come cloaked in darkness. It comes clad in iron, roaring like fire. The Mandalorians. You see their ships before you see them, war cruisers like blades cutting through the stars, angular hulls gleaming like predatory teeth. Their engines howl like beasts, filling the black with a sound that rattles you from within. The sight of them stirs something primal in your chest, a fear older than the Republic itself, a recognition that these are not soldiers bound by treaties or codes. These are hunters, and when hunters move, prey runs or dies. You land on a world scarred by their passing. The sky is still thick with smoke, acrid and choking, scratching the back of your throat as you breathe. Buildings stand half-collapsed, their bones jutting like broken ribs. You step over the shattered glass of homes that will never be lived in again. The ground crunches beneath your boots, ash, rubble, something brittle that might have been bone. And in that silence, you hear it again. The drums. They are not real. Not here, not now, and yet they echo in your ears all the same. The Mandalorians are not here, but their presence lingers like a scar burned into the Force itself. When you finally see them, you understand why entire civilizations tremble at their name. Warriors clad in Beskar, iron forged from the heart of fallen stars. Their armor gleams under foreign suns, every plate dented with history, every scratch a story. Their visors, blank and unyielding, reflect no humanity, only the image of your own fear staring back at you. They do not march in ranks. They do not shuffle in lines. They move like predators, confident, assured, silent when they choose, deafening when they strike. The hiss of their jetpacks is the whisper before the kill. The roar of their rifles is the thunder that follows. And their creed? Conquest. Not for riches, not for politics, for glory, for the hunt, for the simple truth that strength must be tested, and the galaxy itself is their proving ground. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because against the Sith, you fought shadows. Against Mandalorians, you fought fire. And fire does not yield. You remember the first time their fleets carved into Republic space. The Senate argued. The Jedi counseled patience. But the Mandalorians did not wait for permission. They descended like predators from hyperspace, striking at weak worlds first, worlds unguarded, worlds that screamed but received no answer. You hear those screams still, a woman clutching her child as the sky rained fire, a soldier calling for reinforcements that would never come, the silence that followed when the transmission cut out. You fought them once, lightsaber in hand, the blade humming, the air trembling with heat. You thought you were ready. You were not. Their armor turned aside your strikes. Their tactics broke your formations. And for every Mandalorian you cut down, 3 more descended, their jetpacks screaming, their rifles blazing, their blades hungry for blood. They fought like wolves, never alone, always circling, always striking from angles you could not predict. You realized then that they were not simply warriors. They were war made flesh. The Jedi Council hesitated. The Republic pleaded for restraint. They whispered that perhaps the Mandalorians sought on, limited conquest, that perhaps negotiation was possible. But you knew better. You smelled the fire. You tasted the ash. You heard the drums in your bones. The Mandalorians did not come to bargain. They came to test the galaxy. They came to find its strongest and break them, and nothing you said could convince the galaxy of what was coming. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. You saw the storm, but no one believed the rain until it drowned them. You walked through the ruins of Cathar, the memory heavy in your chest. The Mandalorians did not just conquer that world. They slaughtered it. An entire species driven to the edge of extinction, their bones left bleaching in the sand, their cries echoing through the Force like shards of glass cutting your skin. You feel the weight of that massacre pressing on you even now, years later. The Mandalorians called it victory. You call it what it was. Genocide. And yet, part of you cannot help but feel the pull of their creed, their unity, their ferocity, their refusal to kneel to anyone, not Republic, not Jedi, not Sith. In them you glimpse something raw, something terrifying, something honest. They are not cloaked in lies. They do not hide their hunger. They do not pretend to be saviors. They are predators, and they do not apologize for it. Sometimes you wonder if that honesty is more dangerous than any Sith trick. The war grows, system after system falls, Republic fleets scatter like frightened prey, Jedi are forced to abandon their temples, their codes tested in ways they were never prepared for. You feel the galaxy itself trembling as the drums grow louder, faster, relentless. The Mandalorian Crusade is not a passing raid, it is a tide, and tides do not stop until they have consumed everything in their path. And yet, as you stand in the shadow of their conquest, you sense something deeper in the Force, a disturbance, a ripple, like the faint stirring of another shadow watching from afar. Because war, true war, always feeds the darkness. And the Mandalorian Crusade is not only testing the Republic. It is preparing the stage for something worse, something waiting to see who survives this fire, so it can claim the ashes. That is the truth you cannot speak aloud. That is the dread that coils in your chest. The Mandalorians are not the end, they are the spark. And sparks always light something greater. You close your eyes, and the vision comes to you. You are standing on a battlefield. Fire raining from the skies, metal clashing against metal, the Force screaming as countless lives are extinguished. In the center stands a figure clad in Mandalorian armor, crimson visor glowing like a wound in the night. Their blade is not a lightsaber, but it hums with equal fury, cutting through soldier and Jedi alike. Around them the drums thunder, faster and faster until they blur into the sound of your own heart breaking. And then, just beyond that figure, you see it. A shadow. Not Mandalorian, not Republic. Something older, something waiting, watching, smiling. You open your eyes with a gasp, the vision fading, but the dread remains. The Mandalorian Crusade is not the true war. It is the prelude. It is the fire meant to soften the galaxy, to break it, to bleed it dry. And in that bleeding, something else will come. Something darker. The drums fade for now, distant in the night, but you know they are not gone. You know they will return, louder, closer, crushing everything in their path. The Mandalorians are still out there, still hunting, still burning their way across the stars. And when they come again, you will have no choice but to meet them in the fire. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because you were never allowed to fight one war at a time. Because every battle was only the beginning of another. Because even as you raised your saber against the Mandalorians, you could feel the shadow of the Sith waiting beyond them, patient, silent, hungry. The Mandal. Orion Crusade has begun, and already the galaxy is burning. It begins with silence, not the silence of peace, but the silence that comes when voices have screamed themselves hoarse and nothing remains but the hollow echo of indecision. You sit in the council chambers, light filtering down from the vaulted ceiling in cold shafts that illuminate the dust in the air. The great masters are gathered in a circle, robes heavy, faces unreadable, voices calm as stone. But you hear it underneath: fear, hesitation, the kind of quiet that tastes like iron on your tongue, the kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl because you know it will not last. Outside these walls, the galaxy is burning. And here, they speak of patience. You feel your hands clench before you even realize it. The Mandalorians are slaughtering entire worlds, reducing cities to ash, enslaving the survivors, testing their strength against anyone foolish enough to resist. You've walked those ruins. You've smelled the smoke, felt the heat of blaster fire singeing your skin, heard the cries of children fading into silence. The memories come back unbidden, the acrid sting in your throat, the press of bodies running past you in terror, the hollow thud of a body hitting the ground too close to your feet. And here, in this chamber, the council speaks of restraint, of balance, of waiting. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. You were told to feel everything and do nothing. But then a voice cuts through, not timid, not soft, clear, sharp, dangerous. Revan. His presence fills the room the way a storm fills the sky, electric and undeniable. He doesn't shout, he doesn't need to. His words carry weight because they are born of truth carved in fire. He speaks of Cathar, of the massacre, of the Mandalorian war engines grinding across the stars. He says what you have thought 100 times but never dared to speak. If the Jedi do not act, they are complicit. If the Republic falls, it will not be the Mandalorians' fault alone. It will be the fault of every Jedi who sat in silence while the galaxy burned. You feel the room shift, the tension coil tighter. Some masters narrow their eyes, their calm composure cracking just enough to reveal anger or fear. Others lower their gaze because Revan's words have cut too deep. And then there are the younger Jedi, your peers, your brothers and sisters. You see the fire in their eyes, the way their breaths quicken, the way their shoulders straighten. They feel it too. The pull, the call, the truth that to do nothing is to betray everything the Jedi claim to stand for. But the Council does not yield. They speak of the Sith, of shadows beyond the rim, of a darkness that feeds on war. They warn that rushing into battle may unleash something worse. You hear their reasoning. You even feel the cold logic of it sink into your bones. But then you remember the face of a dying soldier reaching for your hand, whispering for help that never came, his voice breaking in your ears as life slipped away. The Council speaks of the future, Revan speaks of now, and you know which truth you can live with. The schism does not come with a shout, it comes with footsteps, quiet ones, determined ones. Revan does not storm from the chamber, he leaves it. Cloak flowing behind him, mask yet unworn but already forming in the shadow of his defiance. And one by one, others follow. Not because they hate the Council, not because they seek glory, but because they cannot sit in silence while the galaxy burns. You feel your own feet move, heavy, trembling, but certain. And when you step across that threshold, you know you have made a choice that will never be undone. The order fractures. Brothers and sisters who once meditated together, who once sparred side by side, now look at one another across a widening gulf. Some stay, clinging to the wisdom of the council, to the belief that patience is strength, that restraint is the only way to avoid catastrophe. Others go, drawn by Revan's fire, compelled by the screams of a galaxy that will not wait. The bonds of family stretch, strain, and snap. And in the Force, you feel it tear like fabric ripped apart. You march into war, not as a lone soldier, but as part of something new. The Republic hails you as saviors, their fleets rallying under Jedi banners, their citizens cheering your names as your ships descend. For the first time, you feel what it means to be more than an observer. You are no longer bound by silence. You are action. You are resistance. You are the blade held against the fire. And for a moment, it feels right. For a moment, you believe this is what it always should have been. But the truth gnaws at you, quiet, insistent. For every world you save, another burns before you arrive. For every fleet you destroy, another emerges from hyperspace. For every Mandalorian you strike down, another takes their place, stronger, fiercer, hungrier. And in the shadows of battle you feel something else, a ripple, a whisper. The darkness the Council warned about, coiling tighter with every life lost. You feel it when you close your eyes at night, when the screams of the dying refuse to fade from your mind. You feel it when you watch Revan, his power growing, his certainty hardening, his defiance shifting into something sharper. You wonder if you are following a savior or forging a tyrant. The war rages, endless, merciless. You fight on worlds whose names you cannot even remember, their skies choked with smoke, their rivers running red. You breathe in the metallic stench of blood, the acrid burn of blasters, the ozone tang of lightsabers colliding. You taste the bitterness of rations swallowed in haste between battles. Your body aches, your hands tremble, your spirit frays. But still you fight. Because to stop is to abandon everything. To stop is to admit that maybe the Council was right, and that is a truth you cannot bear. And always, there is Revan, his presence like a beacon in the Force, drawing Jedi and soldiers alike. His mask comes later, but already you feel the myth building around him, the whispers of his name carrying across fleets, through trenches, into the hearts of the desperate. To many, he is a hero. To some, he is a warning. To you, he is both. And as the battles stretch on, as the fire consumes more of the galaxy, you begin to wonder where his path will lead. Because every step he takes forward feels like a step away from the Council, away from the Order, away from the Jedi you thought you knew. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even when you tried to do the right thing, you were never sure whose side you were truly on. Because saving the galaxy and damning it felt too much alike. Because the Force never gave you answers, only choices. The Mandalorian Crusade roars louder, the battles bloodier, the lines sharper, and in the midst of it all, you feel the moment drawing closer, the moment when Revan's defiance will no longer just be about fighting the Mandalorians, the moment when his choices will reshape not only the war, but the entire future of the galaxy. And you, standing here, saber in hand, ash on your tongue, fear in your chest, you know you will be forced to choose again. Between the order you left, the leader you follow, and the darkness that waits just beyond the horizon. Because Revan's defiance is not the end, it is the beginning. It begins with a face, not yours, not mine, his, Revan's. And yet even now you struggle to recall it. The edges blur in your memory, the features slip away like sand through your fingers. Was his gaze calm or burning? Was his mouth kind or cruel? You do not know anymore, because there came a moment when that face disappeared forever, when he chose to hide himself not only from the galaxy, but from you, a mask of Mandalorian iron, expressionless, merciless, eternal. And the moment he put it on, the galaxy itself seemed to shudder. You were there. You saw it. The battlefield stretched endless before you, smoke choking the sky, the air thick with the copper sting of blood and the ozone bite of blaster fire. Ships screamed overhead, their engines leaving trails of fire across the heavens. The ground trembled beneath the weight of marching soldiers, the crash of detonations, the roar of Mandalorian war cries, and in the center of it all stood Revan. His cloak was torn, his saber burned bright, and yet there was something different about him, something you could not yet name. The mask lay in the dust at his feet, half buried, the last relic of a fallen Mandalorian warrior. Its crimson visor reflected the flames around it, glowing like an open wound. The metal was scarred, dented, but still unbroken, just like the Mandalorian spirit itself. And when Revan reached down, when his fingers closed around that iron face, you felt the galaxy hold its breath. The sound of war seemed to fade for a heartbeat. The screams, the gunfire, the clashing blades, all distant, as though the Force itself was waiting, watching. He lifted the mask slowly, almost reverently, as though he were not claiming the relic of an enemy, but accepting a crown. For one terrible moment you saw his eyes, sharp, burning, endless in their fury and conviction. You wanted to believe they still belonged to the man you knew, the brother you once trusted. But when he raised the mask and sealed it over his face, that man was gone. In his place stood something else, a leader who was no longer merely Jedi, no longer merely man. He was myth, he was Revan. The soldiers around you cheered, their cries echoing over the battlefield, a wave of devotion that seemed to shake the very ground. To them, he was a savior. To the Mandalorians, he was a conqueror. To the Council, he was a traitor. But to you, he was all of these things at once, and none of them, because behind that mask, you could no longer see his doubt, his fear, his humanity. You saw only the reflection of your own. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because you were forced to follow a man you could no longer truly know. The mask changed more than his face. It changed his presence. His voice, filtered through the iron, became something deeper, something heavier. Every word he spoke carried like a decree, every command striking like a blade. And people obeyed. Not because they feared him, though many did, but because he gave them purpose in a galaxy where purpose had been shattered. He became the symbol the Republic needed, the weapon the Jedi could not provide, the myth the war demanded. And yet you felt it in the Force, that subtle shift, that dangerous weight. Symbols inspire, but symbols also consume. You fought beside him, saw the strategies no one else could conceive, the brilliance with which he broke Mandalorian lines and shattered their fleets. Entire battles turned on a single decision from him. Entire wars pivoted around the will behind that mask. You watched him walk through fire as though it were air, stand unyielding against fleets that should have crushed him. He was not just winning the war, he was reshaping it. He was reshaping you, and still the mask remained. At night, when the battlefield fell quiet and the stars burned cold above, you wondered what remained beneath that iron face. Did he still laugh? Did he still dream? Did he still carry the weight of those he could not save? You tried to remember the way his eyes once looked at you, the way his voice once sounded without the echo of metal. But the harder you tried, the more it slipped away, until you realized the truth. Perhaps Revan himself no longer remembered. And with each victory, with each world reclaimed, with each Mandalorian fleet burned to ash, the line blurred. Was he saving the galaxy or conquering it? Was he fighting for the Republic or for himself? You heard the whispers, the soldiers who hailed him as more than Jedi, the officers who feared that he might never surrender the power he had claimed, the Council's warnings that he was drifting further from the light, and in your heart you wondered if the mask had not simply hidden his face, but swallowed it whole. The war reached its climax. Malachor. Even now the name tastes like ash on your tongue. You see it in your nightmares. The planet scarred, torn apart, its very core screaming in the Force. Revan's fleet loomed like a storm above it, his mask gleaming from the bridge as he ordered the strike. The superweapon, the mass shadow generator, ignited, and in one instant the world cracked. Thousands of ships, Mandalorian and Republic alike, were crushed in the collapse, screams echoing in the Force so loud you thought your mind would break. You felt your chest cave under the weight of it, your ears ring with the silence that followed. And Revan stood in the center of it, unshaken, victorious, terrifying. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because when you looked at him then, you did not see the boy you once knew, the friend you once trusted. You saw a man who had become a legend, and legends do not belong to, anyone. Legends consume. Legends command. Legends reshape the galaxy in their image. When the Mandalorians finally fell, when their leader was broken, their fleets shattered, their worlds humbled, you expected relief. You expected the war to end. But Revan did not rest. His eyes turned outward to the stars beyond known space. His mask gleamed as he spoke of shadows waiting in the unknown regions, of enemies greater than the Mandalorians, of a darkness that must be faced. Some followed him without question, swept up in his vision. Others hesitated, sensing the danger of a path that led away from everything the Jedi had ever been. And you felt torn in two, because you wanted to believe him. You wanted to believe that he still fought for the galaxy. But the mask revealed nothing, and the man beneath it was slipping further away. You stand at the threshold now, the war behind you, the darkness ahead. Revan's mask reflects the stars, each one a fire waiting to be claimed or extinguished. His voice carries over the comms, firm, commanding, inescapable. He calls for you to follow, to trust him, to march into a future that feels less like salvation and more like surrender. And you must choose. Will you follow the mask? Or will you try to remember the man beneath it, even as he disappears into myth? That is the weight of his defiance. That is the burden of his mask. It hides his face. It hides his doubt. It hides his humanity. But it cannot hide the truth. The galaxy is bending beneath his will, and you cannot tell if it will break. The mask of Revan has been claimed, and nothing will ever be the same again. Betrayal never comes from an enemy. You know this. It comes from the person closest to you, the one who stood by your side, who fought with you, who swore loyalty when everyone else doubted. That is why betrayal burns so deeply. It is not the strike itself that wounds you, but the memory of the hand that delivers it. And on that day, as the stars burned and the darkness swelled, you felt it in the force, the sting, the shattering, the moment when loyalty turned to hunger, and friendship became a weapon. You remember the silence before it happened, the quiet of the void, stars glittering like shards of ice scattered across the black. Revan stood at the center of it all, his mask gleaming, his mind calculating the shape of the war yet to come. Ships stretched endlessly, a fleet that could shake the Republic itself, and at his side, as always, was Malak, his shadow, his brother, his hammer, his friend. The air inside the flagship smelled of oil and ozone, of polished steel and recycled breath. The hum of the engines pulsed beneath your feet like the beating of a heart, steady, unyielding. You could taste the copper tang of recycled air, sharp and metallic, like blood on your tongue. And through it all, you felt the weight of destiny pressing in, heavy as stone, suffocating as smoke. Malak watched Revan, and you watched Malak. His jaw clenched, the scar across his face catching the light, his eyes burning with something you could not name. Was it admiration? Was it resentment? Was it both at once? You wanted to believe in him. You wanted to believe that even as the war dragged on, even as the lines blurred between light and dark, Revan and Malak were unbreakable. But in the Force, you felt the fracture forming, a hairline crack, invisible at first, but growing, always growing. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because you could see it coming and still be powerless to stop it. The betrayal did not arrive with a scream. It came with silence. Revan's fleet advanced, preparing to crush what remained of the Republic resistance. Victory was within reach. The mask glowed under the dim lights of the command bridge, his voice steady, his commands like blades carving destiny into shape. And then, in a moment of quiet, the trap was sprung. Malak's flagship turned its guns, not on the enemy, but on Revan himself. The first blast shook the void, tearing through silence with the roar of fire and metal. The stars lit up as turbolasers streaked across the darkness, their green glow reflecting against Revan's mask. You felt your stomach drop, your breath catch as realization slammed into you. It was not the Republic that had struck him. It was not the Mandalorians. It was Malak, his friend, his brother, his shadow. The flagship rocked, alarms screaming, the smell of smoke filling the air, acrid and suffocating. Sparks burst from consoles, raining down like fiery tears. Crew members shouted, their voices breaking with panic, their eyes wide with disbelief, and through it all, Revan stood in the center, unmoving, silent, as though he had expected it all along. Perhaps he had. Perhaps he always knew the hunger in Malak's heart would one day turn against him. You could not move. You could only watch as fire ripped through steel, as betrayal tore through trust, as Malak's fleet poured its fury into the vessel that had once been his master's. The sound was deafening, the sight blinding, the taste bitter on your tongue, and in that moment you felt it. The galaxy itself shuddering, the force splitting under the weight of treachery. Malak's voice thundered across the comms, distorted, booming, heavy with triumph. He declared himself the new Dark Lord of the Sith. He declared that Revan's time had ended, that the throne of darkness now belonged to him. His words were iron, sharp and merciless, echoing in your skull like hammer strikes. And yet beneath the rage, beneath the hunger, you heard something else. Fear. Fear of always standing in Revan's shadow, fear of never being more than second, fear that only by destroying his master could he ever become something greater. And that was the tragedy, because Malak was not just betraying Revan, he was betraying himself. The flagship's hull groaned, fire crawling along its veins, smoke choking the air until your lungs burned. You felt the deck shudder under your boots, the taste of ash thick on your tongue. The heat pressed against your skin, sharp and merciless, until every breath felt like swallowing knives. And through it all, Revan remained still. He did not scream. He did not curse. He did not strike back. He simply turned, his mask reflecting the flames, his eyes hidden, his thoughts unknowable. And for the first time you wondered if he would survive. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because sometimes even the strongest fall, not from enemies, but from those they trusted most. The ship began to break apart, the void outside clawing at the cracks, pulling everything into its cold, endless hunger. You felt your balance slip, your hands scrape against metal, your body thrown as explosions tore through the corridors. The world spun in fire and chaos, and above it all, you heard Malak's laughter. Not the laughter of joy, not the laughter of triumph, but the hollow, empty laughter of a man who has chained himself to his own hunger, a man who has gained everything and lost far more. The Force screamed. The betrayal was complete. The mask of Revan, the symbol of fear and hope alike, vanished into the firestorm. Malak claimed the throne, and the galaxy bent once more, not under the brilliance of a strategist, but under the weight of raw, unrestrained hunger. Malak's reign would not be a war of precision. It would be a war of fire, a war of annihilation, a war where entire planets would burn, not because they stood against him, but because they could. And you stood there, lost in the chaos, your mind a storm of disbelief and despair. The man you once called brother had become a tyrant. The man you once trusted had destroyed the one who made him, and the galaxy, already scarred, now trembled at the feet of a dark lord who cared nothing for balance, nothing for strategy, nothing for restraint. Only hunger, only conquest, only destruction. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because you could feel the truth before anyone else. Revan's fall had been a tragedy. Malak's rise would be a catastrophe. The fire swallowed the flagship. The stars dimmed, and in the silence that followed, you felt the void open wider than ever before. Revan was gone. Malak ruled, and the galaxy would bleed. But legends do not end in fire. Legends endure, and even as Malak declared his throne eternal, even as he drowned the stars in blood, you felt it in the Force, faint, fragile, but unbroken. A whisper, a spark, a presence that refused to die. Revan was not gone. Not yet. And that truth, that whisper in the dark, will change everything. You wake to silence, not the silence of peace, but the silence of forgetting. The silence that comes when your own name slips through your fingers like smoke, when your own reflection looks back at you as a stranger. You open your eyes and you feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down, but you don't know why. Your chest aches like it remembers battles your mind has forgotten. Your heart races like it fears enemies whose faces you cannot recall. This is the silence of a man unmade. And this is where Revan begins again. The smell hits you first, the antiseptic sting of a medbay, sharp and sterile, as though the room itself is trying to erase the blood of war. You hear the soft hum of machines keeping you tethered to life, each beep a reminder that you have not yet been allowed to slip away. The air tastes stale, recycled too many times, dry on your tongue. Light burns your eyes, too bright, too white, until you shut them again and wonder if it would be better to sleep forever. But something inside you refuses. Something inside you stirs. A voice you cannot name whispers in the dark corners of your mind, urging you to rise. You try to remember the war, the fleet, the mask, the betrayal, Malak. But it slips through your fingers like sand. The harder you grasp, the faster it falls away. And yet, you feel it. A storm, a hunger, a shadow deep within your bones. Even without memory, you know you have stood in darkness. You know you have commanded armies that burned the stars. And now, stripped of identity, you feel naked before the galaxy. A weapon shattered, but not destroyed. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because memory might fade, but the weight of your choices never truly leaves you. Jedi voices greet you when you rise, gentle but cautious. Bastila Shan stands at your side, her presence sharp as sunlight, her gaze filled with suspicion wrapped in duty. She tells you, fragments, pieces of what you once were, what you once did. A dark lord of the Sith, a warlord who brought the Republic to its knees, and now, nothing more than a broken man with no past. She does not trust you, not fully. How could she? But the Force binds you to her, whether by destiny or by design, and you feel the tension in her every word, the weight in her every glance. She believes you can change, or perhaps she only hopes. Your days blur into one another, training, questions, endless movement as the Republic reels under Malak's war. Each planet you set foot on tastes of smoke and ash, the smell of burning homes clinging to your lungs, the sound of crying children haunting your nights. You fight alongside soldiers who once cursed your name, and they look at you with unease, as though expecting the mask to reappear at any moment. The galaxy does not forgive easily, and perhaps it should not. Still, you fight. Because something inside you, something deeper than memory, knows you cannot stand idle. Each time your lightsaber ignites, its hum sings in your bones, familiar and terrifying all at once. Its light feels warm against your skin, a reminder of what you once defended before you turned. And in every battle, as blaster fire screams and the stench of charred metal fills your lungs, you feel the darkness stirring within you, tempting you to reclaim it. Victory would be easier in shadow, power would be sweeter, but every time you choose the light, no matter how heavy it feels, no matter how bitter it tastes, you prove that you are no longer what Malak declared you to be. And still, doubt clings to you. You wonder if redemption is truly possible. Can a man who once drowned the galaxy in war ever be forgiven? Can a Sith ever be more than his shadow? Or is this new life nothing more than a cruel joke, a puppet forced to play the hero against his will? At night, when the stars stretch across the void like cold eyes, you hear echoes of your old self calling from the dark. You feel the mask, though it is gone, pressing against your face. And you wonder if Malak's betrayal was not the end of you, but the beginning of something worse. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because the greatest enemy you face is not out there, in the stars, but inside your own heart. The war against Malak drags on, and you lead soldiers who should hate you. You strike at fleets you once commanded, battle strategies you once designed, and each time it feels like fighting your own ghost. You walk through the wreckage of starships that bear your fingerprints, and the smell of burning metal makes you sick. These were once your weapons. Now they are your graves. Bastila stays close, her presence steady, but her eyes betray a storm of their own. She is drawn to you, against her own judgment, against the code she swore to. You feel it too. The closeness, the fear, the temptation. In her voice, you hear hope. In her silence, you hear doubt. And in the way her hand brushes yours when battle ends, you hear the unspoken truth neither of you can admit. The galaxy is at war, but your war, the one inside your chest, is far more dangerous. The Force whispers through it all, testing you, probing you, waiting to see which path you will walk. And each time Malak's armies strike, each time innocents burn, each time your anger rises, you feel the choice before you, to seize the darkness or to let it go, to become the monster once more, or to fight against the shadow within. You choose the light. Again and again you choose, not because it is easy, but because it is not. Because you know the darkness too well, because you know what it would cost. But destiny does not care for your choices. Destiny brings you back to him. To Malak. The final battle approaches. His fleets burn the skies above the Star Forge, an ancient weapon of impossible power, a factory of endless war. Its silhouette against the stars looks alive, pulsing with a hunger of its own, and you feel its presence in the Force like a wound, deep and festering. You remember it, not with your mind, but with your bones. You once commanded it, you once unleashed its fury, and now you must destroy it. The smell of ozone and fire chokes you as the final war begins. Starships clash, their deaths lighting the void in firestorms. The roar of engines, the screams of dying crews, the endless percussion of war, all of it crashes into you like waves against stone. You fight your way into the heart of the Star Forge, your blade singing, your muscles burning, your throat dry from the heat. The air tastes of ash, thick and suffocating, until every breath feels like poison. And there, at the core of it all, waits Malak. He is taller now, colder now, a man reforged by betrayal and hunger. His voice is thunder, his laughter sharp as broken glass. He mocks you, calls you broken, calls you weak, calls you a shadow of what you once were. His words drip like venom, his eyes glowing with the madness of absolute power. And yet, behind it all, you see him for what he is, a man who feared you. A man who destroyed you not because you were weak, but because you were strong. His betrayal was not proof of your failure, it was proof of his. The duel shakes the Star Forge itself. Sparks fly as sabers crash, the smell of ozone thick, the sound like thunder in an endless storm. You feel your arms tremble with strain, your chest burning with every breath, your heart racing as the Force rages around you. Malak fights with fury, each strike heavy as a hammer, each blow dripping with rage. But you fight with something else, not anger, not hunger, but clarity. You fight for those who cannot, for the children who cried on burned worlds, for the soldiers who followed you even when you led them astray, for Bastila, who stood by you when she should have left you behind, for yourself, the man who deserves to be more than the shadow of a mask. The duel ends with silence. Malak falls, his eyes wide, his breath ragged, the fire in him dimming. In his last words, there is no triumph, no laughter, no venom, only regret. He tells you he was afraid, afraid of your strength, afraid of your shadow, afraid of himself. And as the light fades from his eyes, you feel no joy, only sorrow. Because once, he was your brother, and now, he is gone. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because victory always tastes like ash. The Star Forge trembles, its hunger collapsing in on itself, its fire burning out. The galaxy is saved. But as you stand there, chest heaving, sweat on your brow, ash in your lungs, you know the war is not truly over, because wars never end. They only change. And in the shadows of the unknown regions, something darker stirs, watching, waiting, patient as time itself. You walk away from the fire, from the wreckage, from the mask of who you once were. But destiny is not finished with you, not yet. Because legends never die, they only sleep. And when they wake, the galaxy trembles. You think you've won. You think the fires are out, that the screams have faded, that the galaxy can finally breathe again. Malak is dead, the Star Forge is shattered, and the Republic, though battered and bleeding, still stands. You tell yourself it's over. You tell yourself you've earned peace, but the Force has no interest in peace. It only whispers, endlessly, pulling you toward the truth you've tried so hard not to see. And in those whispers you hear it. The war has never ended. It has only been waiting. The stars look different now. You stare into them from the viewport of a ship that drifts between worlds, the hum of the engine steady beneath your boots, the smell of cold metal sharp in your lungs. The stars should bring comfort, but they don't. They are too quiet, too watchful, as if every burning light is an eye fixed on you, waiting for you to make the wrong move. And in the silence, you remember what Malak said, how he was not the true master, how there was something darker, something older behind him. At the time, you dismissed it as arrogance. Now you know better. The dreams begin soon after. You see cities carved into black stone, towers like jagged teeth clawing at a storm-lit sky. You feel the heat of red suns scorching your skin, the taste of ash burning your throat, the cries of billions echoing through a world not your own. And always, you see them, figures in shadowed robes, faces pale as bone, eyes burning like dying stars. They do not speak, but you hear their voices all the same, promises of power, promises of truth, promises of chains. You wake from those dreams drenched in sweat, your chest aching, the ghost of a scream still lodged in your throat. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because sometimes the Force showed you the truth long before you were ready to see it. You follow the trail into the unknown regions, where the maps end and the stars themselves seem to grow colder. The galaxy you know falls behind like a fading memory, and you step into a silence that feels alive. The further you go, the thicker the air seems, as though every breath is weighted with unseen hands pressing on your chest. The starlight grows dimmer, their glow swallowed by the endless dark. You taste copper on your tongue, smell ozone like a storm that never breaks, hear whispers slithering through the silence of the void. You know you should turn back, but you don't. You can't. Because this is the truth you've been searching for. Your ship shudders as you break through an ancient perimeter, fields of derelict wreckage drifting like bones in the void. Starships you don't recognize, designs older than anything in the Republic, sharper, darker, predatory. Their hulls are scarred but intact, their corpses frozen in silent formation, a graveyard of war. You float through it, your heart hammering, your palms slick with sweat, until the wreckage clears and you see it, a world. It is not a world of life, it is a world of hunger. The planet below is jagged, blackened, its surface scarred by canyons that glow faintly red, as if the crust itself bleeds fire. Storms coil endlessly, thunder rolling like the growl of a predator that has been watching you since you entered its cage. You feel the weight of its presence pressing into your bones, heavy, suffocating, ancient. This is not a place forgotten by time. This is a place that has been waiting. And then you see them, ships rising from the shadow of that cursed world, sleek, angular, their hulls shimmering like obsidian under dying stars. A fleet, vast, alive, endless. Not ruins, not whispers. A hidden empire. The Sith were never gone. They were never broken. They were never extinct. They were waiting. You feel the truth slam into you like a blade to the chest. The Republic's war with Malak was nothing but a shadow war, a distraction, a puppet show. The true Sith, the ones who first split from the Jedi, who first carved their empire in blood and shadow, still endure. And as their fleet surrounds you, as the void itself seems to tighten its grip, you understand. You have not ended the war. You have only opened its next chapter. The first transmission strikes like thunder, a voice, deep and cold, echoing across the void as though the stars themselves are speaking. It does not introduce itself. It does not ask questions. It only says, "We have been waiting for you." Your blood turns to ice. You want to speak, but your throat is dry, your voice lost. And then the image flickers into life on the console before you. A figure robed in black, skin pale as stone, eyes burning with cruel fire. He is not Malak. He is not Revan. He is something older, sharper, hungrier. His gaze cuts through you like glass, stripping you bare, peeling back every thought, every weakness. You feel your chest tighten, your lungs burning, your very soul recoiling as though the Force itself bends to him, and in that moment, you know, this is the true Sith. Not the scattered cults you've faced, not the pretenders who claim the name. This is the empire behind the curtain, vast, eternal, patient. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because you realize you've been fighting shadows while the real storm has been gathering just beyond sight. The Sith do not kill you, not yet. They could, but they don't, and that is worse, because it means they want something. They let you see the Empire, they let you glimpse their fleets, their armies, their world of endless hunger, and then they let you go, like a predator that enjoys the chase more than the kill. You leave that cursed place, but you do not leave whole. The air feels heavy in your lungs, the taste of ash clings to your tongue, the weight of their gaze lingers in your bones. You know what you've seen, but you also know the Republic will not believe you. They can barely stand as it is. They are exhausted, fractured, their trust already broken by your past. To tell them the truth now would be to break them entirely, and so you keep it close. A secret, a burden, a blade you must carry alone, but the Force does not let you forget. Every whisper, every dream, every flicker of shadow in the corner of your eye reminds you of what waits in the dark. The Sith are not gone. They are waiting. And you know, with a certainty that crushes your chest, that they will come. Not tomorrow, not next year, but they will come. And when they do, the galaxy will not be ready. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because you can see the storm gathering while everyone else still thinks the sky is clear. You return to the Republic, you return to Bastila, you return to the order that still does not fully trust you. Outwardly, you play the role of savior, the redeemed, the man who destroyed Malak, who ended the Starforge, who saved the galaxy. But inside, you are restless. Inside, you are haunted. Inside, you are already preparing for the war that no one else believes is real. And in the quiet of the night, when the stars burn cold above you and the whispers of the Sith still coil in your ears, you wonder if you will face them alone, or if the galaxy itself will finally open its eyes to the truth. You close your eyes. You breathe deep. You whisper to yourself the truth that no one else dares to believe. The Sith Empire still lives. And somewhere far beyond the rim, in the storm-racked skies of a world carved from hunger and shadow, they are already whispering your name. You thought the war was over. You told yourself that Malak's fall and the Starforge's destruction meant the galaxy could finally breathe again. You told yourself the Order would heal, that the bonds between Jedi would grow stronger, that the Republic, though scarred and trembling, would rise again. But you were wrong, because war has a way of never really ending. It only changes faces. It hides behind the silence, waiting to crawl back into the light. And in that silence, the greatest wound isn't carved by Mandalorian blades or Sith fleets. It is carved from within, by the Jedi themselves. You feel it first in the temple. A place that should hum with serenity now thrums with tension, like a string pulled too tight. The halls are the same, but the air is different, thicker, heavier, electric with distrust. You hear it in whispers carried along polished corridors, see it in the way Jedi pass each other with narrowed eyes, sense it in the way the Force itself ripples with unease. This was once a sanctuary, now it feels like a battlefield without blood. The Council insists on silence. They urge patience, discipline, meditation. They tell you not to act in haste, not to let passion guide judgment, not to let fear dictate truth. But their words taste bitter, stale, as though even they no longer believe them. The Order is splintering, and their silence is not mending the wound, it is deepening it. You remember when Jedi were supposed to be brothers and sisters, guardians of light. But now? Now they look at each other like strangers, like suspects, like enemies. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because sometimes the greatest danger wasn't the Sith, it was the person meditating beside you. And beneath it all is Revan. His shadow lingers in every council chamber, in every whispered conversation, in every doubt gnawing at the heart of the Order. He was the hero who saved the Republic. He was the monster who betrayed it. He was the Jedi who defied the Council, who took others with him into war, who wore a mask and became legend. And even now, even with his memories fractured and his path uncertain, the very mention of his name splits the room in two. Some still see the savior, others still see the traitor. And you see both, and that is what terrifies you most. The war does not begin with blaster fire. It begins with silence, with Jedi who no longer attend council summons, with masters who vanish into the night without explanation, with young knights who whisper in corners, voices sharp, accusing, afraid. It begins with questions that have no safe answers. Who still serves the Republic? Who serves the Sith? Who serves only themselves? It begins with the knowledge that the enemy is no longer out there, in the stars. The enemy is here, wearing the same robes, wielding the same sabers, swearing the same oaths. You remember the first time you felt it break open. A duel in the temple itself. Sabers igniting where meditation should have reigned. The smell of scorched stone. The hiss of energy clashing against energy. The shouts of voices raised not in defense, but in accusation. Jedi against Jedi. Brothers against sisters, masters against students. The council tried to contain it, to bury it, to pretend it was nothing more than a fracture in discipline, but the truth was clear. The Order was at war with itself, and when Jedi fight Jedi, the galaxy suffers. Worlds that once looked to the Order for guidance now see only confusion, betrayal, and blood. Some planets close their borders, turning away both Republic and Jedi alike. Others invite Sith pretenders to offer their protection, desperate for stability, no matter how dark its cost. You feel it in every transmission, in every report. The Republic is bleeding, and the Jedi are too busy cutting each other apart to stop it. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because the galaxy expected you to be a beacon, even as your own light flickered and died. You walk through war zones where the lines blur, where one village is protected by Jedi sworn still to the Republic, while the next is occupied by Jedi who've sworn themselves to Revan's old cause. To the people caught in between, it makes no difference. A saber is a saber, a wound is a wound, a corpse is a corpse. You hear them whisper that the Jedi are no better than the Sith, that perhaps they are the same, and for the first time you wonder if they are right. The Force itself feels torn. Where once it flowed like a river, guiding you with quiet certainty, now it churns like a storm-tossed sea. Every choice feels heavier, every vision clouded, every meditation broken by doubt. You remember when it felt clear, when light and dark were two sides of a blade, simple to distinguish. But now? Now the line is gone. Now every step feels like walking on shattered glass. And through it all, Revan's shadow grows. His name becomes a banner, whispered by those who believe he was right to defy the Council, who believe the Order failed the galaxy by clinging to silence. To them, Revan is not a traitor. He is a prophet, and so they rise, sabers burning, declaring their allegiance not to the Council, but to the legend of the man who wore the mask. Revan's war is long over, but his echo is louder than ever. You see it in the eyes of friends you once trusted, that flicker of doubt, that edge of anger, that whisper of defiance. You want to reach them, to remind them of who they were, of what they once believed. But words fall flat when trust is gone, and so, one by one, they drift away. Some vanish into the night, others meet you on the battlefield, eyes hard, voices cold, sabers drawn. And when your blade meets theirs, when sparks rain across the stone and the air fills with the smell of burning ozone, you feel your heart shatter. Because these are not Sith, these are not strangers. The Pirnabitas. See, ere the people you once called family. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because sometimes the hardest battles weren't against the enemy, they were against the people you loved. The war rages on, unseen by most of the galaxy, but you feel it in every breath. Councils fracture, temples burn, Padawans are forced to choose sides before they even understand what sides mean. And always, the Republic grows weaker, bleeding while its defenders devour each other. You wonder how long it can last. You wonder if there will be anything left when the dust settles. You wonder if this was always the Sith's plan, if the true empire you glimpsed in the shadows is smiling as it watches you tear yourselves apart. And in the dead of night, when the silence is too heavy and the Force too quiet, you let yourself ask the question you fear most. What if Revan was right? What if the Council's silence doomed you all? What if defiance was the only way to save the galaxy? The thought tastes like poison, but it lingers on your tongue, bitter and sharp, impossible to swallow. You wake each morning to the same truth. The Jedi are not united. They are broken, and in that fracture the Sith will return. You feel it. You know it. The galaxy will not survive another war. Not when the Guardians of Peace have already destroyed their own peace from within. And then, one night, you dream. You see the shadowed empire again. Fleets rising like storm clouds, worlds burning beneath their hunger. You see a mask lying shattered on the ground, the pieces catching fire. You see a hand reach for it, not yours, and you wake with your chest tight, your breath shallow, your heart pounding with a truth you cannot escape. The Jedi Civil War is not the end. It is the prelude, because something worse is coming, and when it does, you won't know who among your brothers and sisters will still be standing beside you, and who will already have joined the darkness. You hear it before you see it, not a sound, not in the way you understand sound, but an absence of it. A silence so deep it rings in your bones, gnaws at your skin, presses against your ears until you can almost believe you've gone deaf. It isn't the silence of peace. It isn't the calm after chaos. It is emptiness, raw and jagged, where something sacred should be. That is how you meet the exile, not through their face, not through their voice, but through the hollow that follows them. A wound in the Force so vast you can feel it from across the stars. The first time you stand in their presence, you want to look away, you want to run, because when you reach for the Force, when you stretch out with your senses to touch the world, there is nothing. No warmth, no current, no gentle hum of life threading through them, only silence. And silence in the Force is wrong, silence is unnatural, silence is terrifying. You were raised to believe the Force binds all things, flows through all things, connects all things, and yet here stands someone who has severed that bond, who carries the absence like a scar carved across reality itself. And yet you can't look away, because in that silence you feel a truth that cuts deeper than any saber. This is what war does. This is what betrayal costs. This is what happens when the light you swore to protect demands too much of you until there is nothing left but the void. The Jedi call them a heretic. They call them a betrayer, a deserter, a coward who turned from the Council's wisdom to follow Revan into the blood of the Mandalorian Wars. They whisper the word exile like a curse, like a brand, like a name meant to strip away humanity itself. But when you listen closely, when you walk in their silence, you hear something else. You hear the echo of 1,000 voices screaming, cut short in a single instant. You hear battlefields where the DT it never left, where their final cries still cling to the earth. You hear the cost of survival, and you realize something no council will ever admit. The exile did not abandon the Force. The Force abandoned them. You walk with them through shattered halls of memory, through battlefields littered with ghosts that only they can feel. Every step they take is heavy, as if the ground itself resists their weight. You can smell the iron tang of blood still clinging to their armor, years old but never washed away. You can hear the whispers of the fallen in their silence, voices of brothers and sisters who died at their side, cut down by the same war they were ordered to fight. And when you look into their eyes, you see it, the wound. Not on their skin, not in their flesh, but in their soul, a jagged scar where light once lived. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because you could give everything, your loyalty, your blood, your very connection to the Force, and still be cast out when it no longer suited the Council's narrative. You feel the betrayal heavy in their silence. The Council judged them not for fighting, not for killing, not even for winning, but for surviving in a way the others could not. They returned from the Mandalorian Wars alive when so many others fell, and that survival came at a price. The exile stood at Malachor Fiv, at the heart of the wound, where a weapon of unimaginable power tore through armies in a single instant. The screams of Mandalorians and Jedi alike still hang in the air there, echoes burned into the Force itself, and it was there, in that moment of unthinkable devastation, that the exile chose silence over madness. They severed their bond to the Force rather than drown in its agony. They cut themselves free, and the galaxy never forgave them. You walk with them now, years later, as they return from exile to a galaxy that barely remembers them. The Republic limps on, fragile and broken. The Jedi are shadows of themselves, their numbers thinned, their temples scarred, their faith shaken. And into that fragile silence walks someone who carries silence within. You can almost taste the tension in the air, bitter like ash, sharp like the tang of ozone before a storm. Wherever they go, they are met with suspicion, with fear, with the same whispers: exile, outcast, wound. But there is something else too: curiosity. Because wounds, even when they terrify you, draw you closer. You want to understand them. You want to know how someone can stand severed from the very thing that binds the galaxy together and still walk, still breathe, still live. You want to know if their silence is a curse or a kind of freedom. You hear their voice only sparingly, and when they speak, it is heavy with weight, each word chosen like a blade drawn carefully from a sheath. They do not waste breath on philosophy. They do not speak in riddles like the Council. Their words are raw, stripped of pretense, scarred by memory. You feel every syllable as if it were carved from stone, unpolished but impossible to ignore. And yet the silence speaks louder. You feel it ripple outward from them, a gravity all its own. It bends the Force around them, pulls at those who walk nearby, makes allies out of strangers, disciples out of wanderers. You see it again and again, people drawn into their orbit, not by command, not by destiny, but by the simple, undeniable truth that the exile carries something no one else does, a wound that reflects the one bleeding in the galaxy itself. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because you could spend your life preaching detachment, serenity, balance, and then find yourself following the one person who had none of those things, because somehow their silence felt more honest than the Council's wisdom ever did. And so you walk with them, deeper into the cracks of a broken galaxy. You pass through ruins where Jedi once stood proud, temples now abandoned, their stones blackened by betrayal. You walk across worlds scarred by the Mandalorian Wars, still smoking years later, the soil refusing to heal. You pass through the underworld of the Republic, where corruption festers in shadows, where ordinary people spit when they hear the word Jedi. And through it all, the exile's silence speaks. It reminds you that every scar, every fracture, every wound leaves an echo, and the galaxy is nothing but echoes now. But echoes draw something else: shadows. And you begin to feel it as you walk. The Sith. Not the scattered remnants of Malak's crusade, not pretenders or fallen Jedi, but something older, hungrier, waiting. The exile's silence calls to them like blood in the water. You can feel it in the Force, or rather, in the space where the Force should be. They are coming. They have always been coming, and the wound will not go unnoticed. One night, you dream. You dream of Malachor. You smell the burning ozone, the charred metal, the iron stench of death. You hear the endless chorus of screams, rising and rising until it splits into silence. You see the exile standing at the heart of it, eyes hollow, face wet with tears, their voice a whisper too soft to hear. And then, in the dream, you realize it is not their silence you hear, it is yours. Because when the wound spreads, it takes everything with it. You wake with a shiver, and when you look at the exile, when you walk again in their shadow, you realize the truth you've been trying to ignore. The silence is spreading. The wound is growing, and if it consumes the exile, it may consume you too. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even when you tried to heal, even when you tried to listen, even when you tried to walk with the broken, you could feel yourself breaking too. And yet for all the silence, there is still a choice. The exile can still walk forward, still gather allies, still carve a path into the shadows that wait. The wound is not the end, it is the beginning. But whether it is the beginning of healing or the beginning of collapse, you cannot yet tell. And as you follow, as you feel the silence deepen, you know one truth with painful clarity. The wound is not just in the exile. The wound is in the galaxy, and it is only getting larger. The first thing you notice is the silence. Not the silence of peace, not the gentle hush of night, but the silence of something wrong, something shattered, something that should never have been. Malachor 5 does not greet you with sunlight or song. It greets you with a graveyard sky, choked in green and gray, a permanent storm boiling across a wounded horizon. When you step onto its soil, the air tastes of ash. It clings to your tongue, gritty and bitter, as if the planet itself wants you to remember what it has swallowed. And you do, because you can feel it. The scream of the Force, still echoing, still bleeding, centuries after the last blade fell. You walk across stone that isn't stone anymore. Entire continents were shattered here, broken by weapons meant to erase armies in a single heartbeat. The ground beneath your boots is jagged and glassed, fused by fire hotter than any sun. When you look closer, when you let your eyes linger too long, you realize it isn't just stone. It's bone. It's armor. It's ships crushed into the earth, bodies pressed so deep into the surface they became part of it. Malachor 5 did not bury its dead. It made them the planet itself. Every step you take sinks you deeper into memory. You can smell the iron tang of blood that hasn't flowed for years but somehow never left. You can hear the distant roar of battle, as if the planet itself refuses to let the war end. The echoes come without warning, voices, screams, the clash of sabers, the thunder of explosions, and when they fade, the silence feels heavier, as if mocking you for thinking you'd escaped it. This is not just a battlefield. This is a wound carved into the galaxy's flesh, a scar that will never heal, and at the center of it all is the weapon, the mass shadow generator. You can still feel its pulse even though it hasn't fired in years. A gravity so heavy it bends memory itself, dragon, you down into the moment of destruction. You see it when you close your eyes. You see fleets torn apart like paper, ships ripped from the sky, men and women screaming as they are pulled into the black maw of annihilation. You see Jedi cut down by their own choice to fight, Mandalorians broken not in honorable combat but erased in a heartbeat of mechanical fire. You see the exile standing at the heart of it, eyes wide, soul breaking, choosing silence rather than drown in the tidal wave of death. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because even when you obeyed, even when you fought for the Republic, even when you gave everything the Council asked of you, this is where it led. To Malachor. To a wound that devoured not just armies, but the very bond between you and the Force. You wander through the ruins, and the planet does not let you forget. Jagged towers lean at impossible angles, their tips broken and charred, monuments to a civilization that died screaming. The architecture is alien, ancient, black stone carved with symbols that whisper of Sith long before the war. You run your fingers across one of the carvings, and the stone feels warm. Too warm, like it remembers blood. The whispers crawl into your ear, not words you understand, but emotions, hunger, rage, despair. Malachor does not just echo with death. It feeds on it. You close your eyes, and suddenly you're not alone. You see Revan, standing where you stand now, their mask reflecting the broken light. You hear Malak's voice, deeper, sharper, the sound of loyalty twisting into ambition. You feel the Mandalorians roaring in defiance even as their ships are torn apart above them. You see the exile, younger, unscarred, but already broken inside, staring into the abyss of what they've done. And in that moment, you understand why they cut themselves off from the Force. Because if they had let themselves feel the screams of Malachor 5, it would have destroyed them. But the planet doesn't care for your understanding. It wants more. You hear the echoes rising, louder now, clawing at your skin, your mind, your soul. The voices of the dead do not fade. They demand. They beg, they accuse. You hear them ask why they had to die, why their lives were traded for victory, why the Jedi who swore to protect them became executioners instead. The questions burrow into you until you can't tell if they're voices at all, or just your own guilt, magnified by the wound that never healed. The exile feels it too. You see it in their eyes, hollow but unyielding. They walk these ruins not as a visitor, but as a prisoner returning to their cell. This planet owns them, chains them, binds them tighter than any council decree. Malachor is not just where they lost the Force, it is where the galaxy lost them. You wonder if they've come here to remember, or to let themselves finally be consumed. You try to steady your breath, but the air is heavy, thick, poisoned. Every inhale tastes like smoke, like rot, like old blood. It fills your lungs until you want to cough, but even the cough feels smothered, lost in the endless silence. The silence presses against your skull, a weight so crushing it feels like gravity itself has doubled. And then you realize it has. The weapon's shadow still lingers. It bends the planet, bends the Force, bends you. You stagger as you walk, as if the ground itself doesn't want you to move forward. And still, you do. Because you have to know what lies at the center. You have to hear the scream in its truest form. You descend into the depths, into caverns carved by fire and death. The walls glow faintly with green fissures, light that isn't light at all but energy bleeding from the wound. It flickers across your skin like fireflies made of pain. The deeper you go, the louder the echoes become. You hear the cries of Jedi you once admired, Mandalorians who once seemed invincible, civilians who had no part in this war but were crushed all the same. Their voices overlap until they are a single chorus of despair. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because you told yourself you fought for the Republic, for peace, for life, and then you stood on a world like this, where all that remained was ash and bone. At the very heart of Malachor, you find it. A wound not just in the Force, but in reality itself. The air bends around it, ripples like heat on desert sand. Your skin prickles as you approach. Your stomach lurches as if gravity itself has forgotten its rules. The scream is deafening now, though no sound reaches your ears. It's inside you, vibrating in your chest, rattling your bones, clawing at your mind. You want to turn back. You want to run. But you can't. Because you know this is where it all began. This is the shadow that shaped Revan, that broke Malak, that exiled a Jedi, that scarred the galaxy. And then you feel it. The presence. Not the dead, not the exile. Something else. Something older. Something waiting. It coils in the silence, vast and patient, watching from the wound itself. You can't name it, can't see it, but you feel its hunger. Malachor is not just a scar, it is a doorway, and something is waiting on the other side. You shiver, and the air grows colder. The exile takes a step closer, their face unreadable, their silence louder than the scream itself. And in that silence, you realize the truth. Malachor was not the end of the war. It was only the beginning. Because wounds don't stay closed forever. They bleed, they spread, and what bled into Malachor is already seeping into the galaxy. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because every war you fought, every victory you claimed, every choice you made, it always left a scar. And scars, no matter how deep you try to bury them, always echo. You close your eyes and listen. And the scream of Malachor answers. But beneath it, softer, deeper, you hear another sound, not a scream, not silence, laughter, and you know with a chill sinking into your bones that something in the shadows has begun to wake. You hear it before you see it, the sound of nothing. A silence so deep it devours thought itself, so heavy it makes your heartbeat sound like thunder in your ears. You are not on a battlefield now, not in the ruins of some republic world or among the broken steel of fallen fleets. No, you are somewhere darker, somewhere older, somewhere where shadows do not simply cling to walls, they breathe. This is where the galaxy's nightmares gather. This is where the Sith Triumvirate waits. The first step you take echoes like a scream. The floor beneath you is obsidian, slick as glass, reflecting the faint glow of torches that burn without flame. The air is cold enough to burn your lungs, each breath leaving frost on your lips. The silence is suffocating, pressing against your chest, making you question if you should turn back. But you can't, because something here has called you, something vast, something patient, something hungry. Three presences stir in the dark. You don't see faces yet, only the outlines, the impressions in the force, like storms on a horizon you cannot escape. One reeks of hunger, endless and gnawing. Another reeks of agony, flesh and spirit stitched together by hate alone. And the last feels like betrayal given form, wisdom wrapped in venom, a voice that whispers not in anger but in quiet inevitability. Together, they do not simply rule the darkness, they are the darkness, and they call themselves the Triumvirate. The hunger speaks first. You feel it before you hear it, a gnawing emptiness in your belly that spreads to your chest, your throat, your very soul. When the sound comes, it isn't speech, it's a vibration, a resonance that rattles your bones, a language you do not understand, but somehow know. You look up, and there he is, Darth Nihilus. A figure draped in black, face hidden behind a mask that looks more like a death mask than anything human. He does not breathe. He does not blink. He only consumes. You can feel him reaching into you already, pulling at your essence, your connection to the Force. He doesn't want your words. He doesn't want your allegiance. He only wants your existence. To be near him is to feel yourself unravel. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because your greatest gift, the Force, that song that bound you to every living thing, becomes your greatest weakness in the presence of Nihilus. He feasts on it like a predator, draining you dry until there is nothing left but silence. Entire worlds have been erased by that hunger, their populations turned to dust without a single weapon fired. You try not to imagine it, but you can't stop. A planet lush and green one moment, barren and empty the next, as if it had never lived at all. And at the center of that emptiness stands Nihilus, mask tilted toward the stars, feeding until there is nothing left. But hunger is not the only voice here. The next presence shakes you for a different reason. Darth Sion. His voice is pain. His body is pain. You don't just see him, you feel him. His flesh is cracked, his skin torn, his bones shattered and mended 1,000 times, each scar a monument to a death denied. He is not alive in the way you understand life. He is willpower made flesh, a man who should have died 1,000 times but refused, dragging his ruined body back to its feet with sheer hate. When he steps forward, you can smell the stench of decay, burnt meat, rot, blood that never stops seeping. His eyes burn with fury, but it is the kind of fury that never fades, never rests, never heals. To look at him is to see a corpse that simply refuses to lie down. You wonder for a moment what it must be like to exist in that kind of agony, to live every second as though your body is betraying you, to wake from every battle broken but rise again because your hate won't let you quit. And then you realize he doesn't just endure it, he thrives in it. His pain is his strength, his weakness is his power. He has turned suffering into immortality. You feel your stomach churn as you realize there is no defeating him in the way you defeat other Sith. To destroy Sion, you would have to make him want to die. And looking into his eyes, you know that day will never come. And then, finally, the last voice rises, and it is the quietest, but it cuts the deepest. Darth Traya, the betrayer. Her presence is calm, smooth, like water running over stone, but you can hear the venom in every syllable. She does not scream, she does not threaten. She simply explains. And somehow that is worse. You see her now, her form cloaked in shadows, her eyes sharp and cold. A teacher once, a guide once, and perhaps she still is. But her lessons are poison. She tells you the Force itself is a lie, that the Jedi are blind, the Sith are slaves, and the galaxy is nothing but pawns caught in the will of something they cannot understand. Her betrayal is not just of the Jedi, not just of the Sith. It is of the Force itself. Her words coil around you, soft and sharp at the same time, and you find yourself questioning things you never dared. Is she right? Is the Force a leash? Is every victory, every loss, every sacrifice just another move in a game you can never win? You try to push it away, but her voice lingers. It always lingers. She does not demand you follow her. She simply makes you doubt. And that, perhaps, is the most dangerous weapon of all. The three of them together, Nihilus, Sion, Traya, they are not an empire in the way of Revan or Malak. They do not rule fleet. Do not command legions across the stars. They do not need to. Their power is something different, something darker. They are shadows, they are wounds, they are silence. And from the ruins of Malachor, from the ashes of the Jedi Civil War, they wait. They wait for the galaxy to tear itself apart. They wait for the last embers of the Jedi to flicker and die. They wait for the moment to strike. And strike they do. You see it in flashes, visions that sear your mind like lightning. Jedi hunted across the stars, dragged from hiding, silenced forever. Entire enclaves burned, libraries erased, temples emptied until their echoes are all that remain. You hear the whisper of Nihilus as he drains another world, the laughter of Sion as he rises again and again, the quiet, cutting lesson of Traya as she poisons another student. The Republic, already broken from war, cannot fight them. The Jedi, already scattered, cannot resist them. The galaxy does not even realize they are the ones pulling the strings. That is their genius. They are not conquerors. They are executioners. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because even when you survived the war, even when you returned from exile, even when you thought the worst was over, the shadows were waiting, always waiting. You look at them now, the Triumvirate, and the truth strikes you harder than any lightsaber could. They are not three lords vying for power. They are three parts of the same wound. Nihilus is hunger, the wound that devours. Sion is agony, the wound that refuses to close. And Traya is betrayal, the wound that teaches you to doubt your own healing. Together they are not simply Sith. They are what happens when the galaxy itself bleeds. The silence grows heavier. You try to breathe, but it feels like Nihilus is already pulling the breath from your lungs. You try to stand, but it feels like Sion's broken body is weighing down your own. You try to think, but Traya's voice whispers in your mind, turning every certainty into ash. The darkness closes around you, suffocating, smothering, inevitable. You realize now why the Jedi feared the Triumvirate more than fleets or armies. You cannot fight shadows with sabers. You cannot kill wounds with blasters. You cannot silence hunger, agony, and betrayal. Or can you? The thought sparks inside you, faint but alive. Perhaps there is a way. Perhaps the exile, the one who carries the wound within them, the one who understands silence better than any other can face them. Perhaps. But as you look into the shadows, into the hunger, the agony, the betrayal, you wonder if even that hope is enough. The silence deepens. The shadows lean closer. The Triumvirate watches. And then, all at once, you feel it. The wound of Malachor opening again, wider, deeper, calling. You hear Nihilus's hunger sharpen. You hear Sion's body crack and mend. You hear Traya's whisper turn into a promise. The galaxy does not know it yet, but the Jedi are already dying, and the shadows are only just beginning to feast. You wake in silence, not the peaceful silence of dawn before the city stirs, not the comforting hush of snow falling against temple walls. This silence is wrong. It is hollow, heavy, the kind that presses against your ribs until every breath feels stolen. You stretch out with your senses, searching for the familiar chorus of the Jedi, the thousands of voices you once felt in the Force, bound together like stars in the night sky. But where there was once music, there is only absence. Where there was once harmony, there is only emptiness. You realize, with a weight that pulls at your bones, that the Jedi are vanishing. Not in one battle, not in one decisive strike, but piece by piece, one by one, like candles snuffed in the dark. At first, you think it must be coincidence. Jedi die in wars. Jedi sacrifice themselves. Jedi walk into danger so others do not have to. That's what it means to carry the blade. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. But then the numbers grow. Temples that once bustled with younglings grow quieter. Councils that once debated endlessly meet in smaller circles. The halls of Coruscant, once alive with footsteps, echo too long, as if the stone itself has begun to mourn. You tell yourself the others are away, on missions, on distant worlds. But in your heart you know, they are not away, they are gone. The shadows hunt them. You feel it, even if you cannot see it. Nihilus drifts like a storm, consuming whole enclaves in a single breath. Where he passes, the Force itself screams, then falls silent forever. You see it in visions, green forests turn to dust, oceans boiling into mist, entire populations collapsing in a single heartbeat, and at the center of that hunger stands the mask, tilted skyward, feeding. You shiver, realizing that to him, a Jedi is no more than a feast. Their wisdom, their sacrifice, their light, it all tastes the same when swallowed in, to nothingness. And then there is Sion. His hunt is different, crueler. He doesn't drain worlds, he doesn't erase voices in a single sweep. No, he hunts you personally. He stalks you through the dark, his footsteps echoing down ruined corridors, the smell of blood and rot always just behind you. You can feel him even when you cannot see him, that ruined body refusing to fall, that fury refusing to fade. You imagine what it must be like for those Jedi who meet him, to cut him down once, twice, 10 times, only for him to rise again, his broken body knitting itself together out of pure spite. How do you fight a man who cannot die? You don't. You run, and every time you run, another flame goes out. But the cruelest voice of all is Tria's. She doesn't need to kill you. She doesn't need to touch you. She only needs to whisper. Her words spread through the survivors, through the Padawans and knights who remain, filling their doubts with poison. She tells them the Council abandoned them. She tells them the Force has betrayed them. She tells them their lives have been wasted in service to a lie. And one by one, you watch the order fracture. Some fall to despair. Some turn to the shadows. Some simply walk away, their sabers left behind, their faith shattered. In the end, perhaps that wound hurts worse than any blade. You walk the temples now, and the silence is unbearable. Statues of heroes watch you with unblinking stone eyes. But there are no students left to learn their names. The libraries hold knowledge written in 1,000 tongues, but there are no scholars left to read them. Meditation halls echo with ghosts, the faintest traces of laughter, debate, song, but when you reach out for them, they are gone. You feel like you are trespassing in a graveyard, though the bodies are nowhere to be seen. The Jedi were not defeated in a single battle. They were erased like chalk in the rain. And you wonder, what must it feel like for those who remain? To be one of the last? To wake each morning and stretch out with the Force, searching desperately for another presence, only to find fewer than yesterday, fewer than the day before. To wonder not if you will die, but when. To realize that every time you ignite your saber, it may be the last flame the galaxy ever sees. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Not because you feared death, but because you knew you were dying alone. The hunt grows bolder. You hear stories whispered through broken comm channels, smuggled through sympathetic voices. A master cut down on Onderon, a hidden enclave drained on Qatar, a council scattered on Dantooine. Their halls nothing but rubble now. Every world you hear named feels like another stone placed on your chest. Every story feels like another light winked out above you, and you know the pattern will not stop until it reaches the core, until it reaches Coruscant itself. But the cruelest truth settles on you like dust. The galaxy does not notice. The Republic limps on, battered from war, too consumed with its own survival to mourn the order that once protected it. To the senators, to the fleets, to the merchant guilds and smugglers, the Jedi are already a memory, a legend fading into myth. You wonder if they even care. You wonder if they ever did. And that thought cuts deeper than any Sith's blade. You close your eyes and try to remember the sound of the temple when it was alive, the murmur of voices in the archives, the clash of training sabers in the courtyards, the solemn tone of the council as they debated the fate of worlds. You hold on to it desperately because it is all you have left. But memory is fragile, memory fades, and every day the silence grows louder until even memory feels like a lie. And yet, you cannot let go. Something inside you refuses. Even as Nihilus devours, even as Sion hunts, even as Tria whispers, something remains. A spark, small, fragile, but alive. Perhaps it is stubbornness, perhaps it is faith, perhaps it is simply defiance, But you cannot help wondering, if there are still a few left, scattered, broken though they may be, then perhaps the order is not truly gone, perhaps silence is not the end. But the shadows do not give you time to hope. They close in. You hear them in every corridor, see them in every dream. Nihilus hungers. Scion rises. Tria whispers. And one by one the lights are going out. You take another step through the empty halls, your boots echoing against the stone, and you know, the order has fallen. The galaxy has lost its guardians. The light has dimmed. The silence has won. But even as you accept it, you feel something stir, a wound deeper than silence, a scar carved into the Force itself, and a lone exile walking toward it. The Triumvirate think the Jedi are finished. They think the silence is complete. They are wrong, because the wound still breathes, and it is coming for them. You feel it before you see it. A presence, not a voice, not a shadow, but something far older, far heavier, pressing against the edges of your mind like cold iron. It creeps into your thoughts, not with the roar of battle, not with the fire of rage, but with patience. The patience of centuries, the patience of something that has always been there, waiting. You shiver because you realize this isn't like Nihilus with his hunger, or Scion with his hatred, or Tria with her betrayal. No, this is deeper, this is darker, this is the hand that has been moving every piece while you never even knew there was a game being played. And then you hear his name whispered in the shadows of history, the Sith Emperor. Not the lords you have seen rise and fall, not the pretenders and warlords who burned bright and then faded. This one is different. This one does not fade. His will stretches beyond lifetimes, beyond wars, beyond the fragile walls of the Republic. His will stretches like roots beneath the soil, unseen but unbreakable. You feel it the way you feel the pull of gravity, constant, invisible, inevitable. The unknown regions. The words alone are enough to chill your blood. The maps stop there. The charts fade. What lies beyond is mystery, silence, stars half forgotten. It is there he has been waiting, building, shaping something too vast for your eyes to see. And you realize with a sickening twist in your stomach that the wars you thought were the end, the Mandalorian Wars, Malachor, the Triumvirate, they were never the end. They were distractions. They were cracks in the armor. They were designs in a pattern older than the Republic itself. You see flashes of it now, visions scattered through the Force like broken glass, armies gathering in the dark, worlds enslaved, their people chanting his name like a prayer they cannot escape. Entire fleets forged in hidden shipyards, their hull glows black as the void, waiting for the day the galaxy grows weak enough to swallow. And at the center of it all sits the Emperor, silent, watching, patient. His throne is not made of stone or steel. It is made of time. Every century he waits, every decade he pulls strings, every year he feeds, he becomes something more than a man, something more than a Sith, something eternal. You can almost taste it in the air when you breathe, the cold metallic tang of inevitability. His presence is like oil on water, spreading without end, coating everything it touches until there is no escape. And yet the galaxy does not see him. They argue in the Senate. They rebuild their fleets. They whisper about trade routes and credits and peace treaties. They believe the war is over, that the Jedi are gone, that the wounds will heal. But you know better. You can feel it. The war has not ended. It has not even truly begun. Because the Emperor is not waging a war of armies. He is waging a war of centuries. He has lived for generations, bending the Force to prolong his existence beyond flesh, beyond death, beyond the limits of life itself. Imagine that. Every master you ever knew, every lord who ever rose, every Republic senator who ever gave a speech, all of them lived and died while he endured. Time itself has become his weapon. And what are you compared to that? A single spark in a storm that has burned for 1,000 years. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because no matter how bright you burned, the dark always had more time. You close your eyes and feel him brush against your thoughts. It isn't words, not really, but you understand the meaning. Hunger, control, ownership. The galaxy is not his to conquer, because in his mind it already belongs to him. Every star is a bead on his chain, every world is a step in his design, and you are nothing but a piece to be moved, a tool to be used, a pawn in a game you never asked to play. But you resist, you push back. You tell yourself that if he can be endured, he can be fought. If he can wait, you can endure too. But the thought rings hollow, because how do you fight a shadow that stretches across centuries? How do you cut down a man who has already lived 10 lifetimes? How do you resist a plan that began before your grandparents' grandparents were born? You can't. And yet, you must. The Force shudders as if it too recoils from him. You feel that the balance itself has tilted, that this one being has bent the current of existence toward his will. His darkness doesn't simply fight the light, it drowns it, absorbs it, bends it until even light becomes another shade of shadow. You realize that even the Jedi, even the Sith you've known, were only ripples in a tide he controls. Nihilus devoured, Scion endured, Tria betrayed, but all of them were children playing with weapons they could not understand. The true Emperor has always been something greater, something worse. You picture him now, though you wish you hadn't. His body is a mask of age, skin stretched thin like parchment, eyes burning with a hunger older than empires. His voice is not loud, not thunderous, but cold and soft, the kind of whisper you hear in your dreams and can't forget. The kind of whisper that convinces you it was your idea all along. His presence is a weight you cannot lift. His will is the gravity you cannot escape. And here is the worst part. He is not rushing. He has no need to. Wars may rage, empires may rise, Jedi may fall, but he waits. He waits because he knows. He knows the galaxy will weaken itself. He knows hope will crumble. He knows that one day, when everyone has forgotten him, when no one believes he exists, when the Jedi are dust and the Republic is fractured, he will strike, and no one will be ready. You feel the despair wrap around you, heavy as chains. To live in his shadow is to live knowing the war has already been lost, only stretched thin across centuries to make you believe you had a chance. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because even when you thought you were winning, you were already playing his game, and yet somewhere deep inside you a spark flickers. The Emperor has his patience, he has his shadows, he has his armies, but you have something else. You have the story, the memory, the knowledge that he exists at all. For centuries he has thrived because no one could see him, but now you see him. Now you know. And maybe, just maybe, knowledge can cut deeper than any blade. Still, as you breathe in the silence of that thought, you feel his gaze turn toward you. The air chills, your skin prickles. You are nothing to him, less than nothing. But still, he notices. He marks you the way a predator marks the air before the kill. And you know, with a certainty that makes your stomach drop, that the Emperor has seen you. The galaxy does not yet know his name. The Jedi are gone, their halls empty, their voices silenced. The Republic limps forward, blind to the storm building in the dark. But you know, you feel it. The hidden Emperor is not coming. He is already here. And as his shadow spreads across the stars, one thought claws its way into your mind, refusing to let go. If he has waited for 1,000 years, what else has he planned? You feel the darkness before you see it, a weight pressing against your chest, like a storm that hasn't yet broken but already fills the air with static, with tension, with inevitability. It isn't loud, it isn't fire or thunder. It is silence, the kind of silence that stretches for centuries, the kind of silence that doesn't need to shout because it knows one truth. It will outlast you. It will outlast everyone. The Emperor has waited 1,000 years, and now his grip begins to tighten. You feel it in the currents of the Force, the way rivers bend when a mountain shifts. Fleets stir in the void, ships built in secret, forged in silence, their hulls black as night. They do not move yet, but you know they will. You can almost hear the hum of engines that haven't ignited in centuries. Rows of starfighters wait in hangars carved into worlds the galaxy has forgotten. Soldiers drill in silence, their eyes glazed, their will stolen by a master they will never truly know. And the galaxy? The galaxy sleepwalks. Senators squabble over credits and tariffs, pretending peace is real because they are too afraid to admit otherwise. Merchants haggle over trade routes, smugglers plot their next heist, farmers sow their fields, and children laugh in streets lit by fading neon. None of them feel the storm pressing in. None of them hear the footsteps of legions being gathered in the dark. None of them notice the shadow stretching across the stars, because it stretches so slowly, so patiently, that they mistake it for the night itself. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because you could feel what they could not. You could sense the hunger of a will that has no end, the steady tightening of a hand they cannot see. And when you warned them, when you spoke of shadows and silence, they laughed because fear makes fools of everyone. They want to believe they are safe. They want to believe these. War is over. They want to believe the wounds of Malachor and Nihilus and Revan will heal. But wounds do not heal when the knife is still buried in the flesh. You close your eyes and let the vision come. Stars swallowed by darkness, one by one. Not in fire, not in screams, but in silence. Entire systems bent to the Emperor's will before a single shot is fired. He doesn't need to destroy them, not at first. He only needs to control them. A senator here, a fleet admiral there, a whisper in a council chamber, a dream that gnaws at a general until he bends without even realizing why. His conquest is not just fleets and armies, it is thought, it is faith, it is obedience planted like a seed that grows slowly until you cannot tell where your will ends and his begins. You imagine what it must feel like to him, to sit at the center of it all, not for years, not for decades, but for centuries. To watch as generations live and die, as republics rise and fall, as Jedi train, fight, and vanish. And still, he waits. Still, he feeds. Still, his shadow stretches further and further until every piece is aligned. How do you fight someone who thinks in centuries while you can barely think past tomorrow? How do you resist someone who has already outlasted your ancestors? The silence in your vision cracks for a moment, and you hear it. Not a voice, not words, but the echo of a promise, conquest eternal. Not just victory in a war, not just a throne to claim, but dominion written into the bones of the galaxy itself. He does not seek to rule for a lifetime. He seeks to rule until the stars themselves flicker out. And the most terrifying thing? You believe he can. You taste ash in your mouth as you breathe, the phantom flavor of worlds burned without flame. You smell ozone, the sting of shipyards building fleets faster than anyone in the Republic could dream. You hear the hollow march of soldiers drilling on worlds without names, their footsteps in rhythm with a drumbeat older than memory. And when you open your eyes, the galaxy around you is still smiling, still laughing, still pretending, and you want to scream because they don't understand. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because knowledge wasn't freedom. It was a curse. You could see the doom that no one else could. You could feel the 1,000-year shadow pressing against your skin, and still you had to live among those who refused to believe it. You had to watch them sleepwalk, blind toward the abyss, and then you feel something else, not just silence, not just hunger, not just inevitability. You feel his gaze. The Emperor does not rule from afar. He reaches, he sees. His will brushes against yours, cold and sharp, like ice pressed to your spine. You are nothing to him, less than nothing. But still, he notices. Still, he marks you. It is like standing beneath a predator's stare, knowing you cannot run, knowing you cannot hide, knowing that even if you are not prey today, you will be one day. You tell yourself you are strong. You tell yourself you can fight. But the truth echoes louder. You cannot fight a storm. You cannot cut the wind. You cannot hold back the tide. And this shade, is not just a tide, it is the ocean itself. The 1,000-year shadow stretches across the stars, and you realize it has already begun. Every war, every betrayal, every fall has been his design. The Mandalorians unleashed, the Jedi divided, the Republic weakened, all of it threads in a web you were never meant to see. And now that you do, it is too late. Still, you cling to the spark. You always cling to the spark. Because what else can you do? The Emperor has his centuries, his fleets, his shadows, but you have the Force. And though it shudders under his weight, though it bends under his will, it is still there. And maybe, just maybe, if one spark can light a fire, if one voice can cut through the silence, then the shadow is not eternal. You open your eyes. The galaxy is still laughing, still dreaming, still sleepwalking, but you no longer see laughter. You see doom. You no longer hear dreams. You hear silence. And you no longer see sleepwalkers. You see prey. The Emperor waits. His fleets wait. His conquest waits. And you? You are awake. But in the quiet corners of your mind, you hear it again, the whisper that will not leave you. If this is only the shadow, what will happen when the darkness itself arrives? You open your eyes to a city of 1,000 towers, a jewel of durasteel and glass, shining under artificial skies, Coruscant, the heart of the Republic. But when you listen closely, when you push past the gleam, past the chatter of speeders in traffic lanes, past the neon signs flickering in the undercity, you hear it. Cracks, splinters, the sound of something vast and ancient beginning to crumble under its own weight. The Senate still gathers in its grand chamber, voices raised, robes rustling, words echoing against duracrete walls polished by centuries of debate. On the surface, it looks like strength. Thousands of delegates, thousands of worlds represented. But you feel the hollowness beneath it. Their words are tired, worn thin from repetition, fragile from compromise. Every speech is a performance, every vote a bargain. When you walk through the chamber, you smell the dust of tradition, not the fire of conviction. And you realize, this is not strength, this is inertia, the weight of centuries dragging forward a body that no longer knows where it's going. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because you could hear more than words. You could hear the fear behind them. Senators pretending loyalty while whispering of secession in private halls. Governors begging for fleets to protect them while secretly hiring mercenaries in the dark. Admirals smiling in meetings while moving ships in patterns that do not match their orders. You could sense the truth. The Republic is still standing, but only because it hasn't yet learned how to fall. The Jedi, too, are not immune. Once their halls rang with certainty. Once their temples hummed with the chorus of voices united in purpose. But now you feel hesitation in every council chamber, doubt in every lesson passed from master to student. The younger Jedi look to the older, searching for strength, and find only silence. The older Jedi look to the Force, searching for clarity, and find only shadows. And when they speak of duty, of service, of faith, you feel the hollow echo in their words. They are not lies, but they are no longer whole truths either. You remember when the Jedi were light, when the galaxy looked to them and saw guardians, protectors, an order set apart not because of power, but because of wisdom. Now the galaxy looks and sees something else. Meddlers, soldiers, judges, some call them traitors, others tyrants. And though the Jedi deny it, though they insist their way is unchanged, you can feel it. The order is bent beneath the weight of wars it was never meant to fight. Malachor, Nihilus, Revan, Sion. Every battle left scars, and those scars do not fade. You walk through the underlevels of Coruscant, and you see what the Senate will not. Families sleeping in alleys beneath the shadow of towers that scrape the sky. Children begging near neon-lit cantinas, their hands outstretched, while senators argue over subsidies that will never reach them. Crime syndicates moving openly, carving slices of the Republic into their own kingdoms while politicians look the other way. The air tastes of exhaust, of fried food cooked in grease too old, of sweat from crowds that live shoulder to shoulder in darkness. This is the Republic, not the shining chamber of the Senate, not the speeches of the chancellors. This, the cracks that grow wider with every year. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because you could not unsee it. You could not unhear the way the galaxy whispered in the Force. Every cry for help, every silent prayer, every scream cut off before it left a throat. You felt them, and still the Council told you to stand apart, to remain neutral, to avoid attachment, to let go. But how do you let go of a galaxy collapsing in your hands? How do you remain neutral when neutrality means watching the Republic die? The cracks are not just political, they are spiritual. You feel it in the Force itself. It doesn't flow the way it used to. Where once it surged, clear and strong, now it hesitates, murky, clouded, it shudders like a river dammed, like water forced through channels it was never meant to run. You wonder if this is what dying feels like, not sudden, not dramatic, but slow. A candle burning low, the wax pooling, the flame growing smaller with every passing breath until only smoke remains, and still, life goes on. Senators debate, Jedi meditate, merchants trade, armies drill, children laugh. That is the cruelest part. The galaxy does not realize it is falling until the ground has already given way beneath it. You feel like you are standing at the edge of a cliff, listening to the stone beneath your feet crumble grain by grain. And when you look up, the others are still dancing, still laughing, still pretending the ground is solid. You wonder if collapse is inevitable. History whispers that it is. Republics rise, republics fall, orders rise, orders fall. And yet, you cannot let go of the spark. You cannot shake the feeling that something could still change, that someone could still change it, that the Force has not abandoned the galaxy entirely, even if it feels thin, even if it feels weak, even if it feels broken. But then you remember the Emperor, you remember his shadow stretched across centuries, pulling at string. Even now. The cracks in the Senate, the doubts in the Jedi, the chaos in the streets, are they the Republic's own doing, or his? Is this collapse natural, or designed? And if it is designed, if every fracture was planted like a seed, watered and grown by his hand, then maybe there is no stopping it. Maybe the fall has already been written. You feel his presence again, cold, watching, not near, not close, but everywhere. Like a pressure at the edge of your thoughts, like a shadow waiting at the corner of every room. He does not need to invade openly. He does not need to strike with fleets and fire. Not yet. He only needs to wait. Wait, as the Republic weakens itself. Wait, as the Jedi argue with themselves. Wait, as the galaxy sleepwalks. And when the time comes, when the cracks finally split wide enough, he will not need to conquer. He will only need to step in. You taste the bitterness of inevitability, like iron on your tongue. You smell smoke that hasn't yet risen but already lingers in the air. You hear silence where laughter should be, emptiness where song should echo. The Republic still stands, but only barely. It is a body upright not because it is strong, but because it has not yet been pushed. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because you can see the push coming, you can see the hand already reaching out. You can feel the moment building, inevitable, unstoppable, closer with every breath. And no matter what you do, no matter how you fight, you know this. The Republic is on the brink, and when it falls, it will not fall alone. You open your eyes to fire. Not a single flame, not a single battlefield, but countless infernos scattered across centuries. The galaxy spins before you, and everywhere you look something burns. A temple crumbles in the heart of Coruscant. A Mandalorian warship shatters in orbit above a nameless world. A Sith fortress collapses into ruin under the weight of its own ambition. And you realize something terrible. These are not different wars. They are the same war, stretching across generations, wearing new masks but whispering the same songs. Jedi, Sith, Mandalorians, emperors, traitors, again and again, locked in a dance as old as the stars themselves. You taste the ash of it on your tongue. You hear the clash of blades that never truly fall silent. You smell the smoke of cities that will never fully rebuild. And you feel it, the heavy truth pressing against your chest, that this is why peace never lasts. Because peace is not the natural state of the galaxy. Conflict is. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because you knew the truth even when the galaxy lied to itself. Senators would declare peace treaties, merchants would sign trade agreements, citizens would rebuild, telling themselves the war was over, but you could feel it in the Force. A tension, stretched taut, waiting for the next strike. Peace was never more than an intermission. A pause between storms, a candle flickering in the wind, destined to go out. You see the Mandalorians first, their drums echoing across centuries. They never disappear, not really. Even when beaten, even when scattered, their culture hums like iron in the veins of the galaxy. Warriors raising their children to fight battles not yet born. Clans sharpening their blades for wars not yet declared. Their creed is simple, their hunger endless. Today they fight the Republic, tomorrow the Sith, the day after each other, and the day after that. Why? Oh, ever dares stand in their path. They are predators who see the galaxy itself as their hunting ground, and no matter how many times they are crushed, they rise again, carrying fire in their blood. But they are not alone. The Sith return, as they always do. You remember the first whispers of their hunger. You remember Revan, Malak, Nihilus, Traya, the Emperor, and yet every time one is defeated, another rises. Different faces, different names, same dream, power, dominion. The galaxy bent under their will. They fall because of betrayal. They rise because of ambition. They collapse under their own hatred, and still they return, because hatred is not a wound that heals. It is a seed that grows in every shadow. That is the endless war. Not one Sith, not one empire, but a cycle of hunger too vast to die. And what of the Jedi? You see them too, across centuries. At first as guardians, their sabers like torches against the dark. Then as generals, leading fleets into battles they never asked for. Then as fractured survivors, hunted, betrayed, scattered, always trying to rebuild, always reaching for light, always carrying hope, even as it flickers like the last ember in a dying fire. You feel their exhaustion, you feel their doubts, but you also feel their stubbornness, their refusal to yield completely. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi, because you never got to rest. Not truly. The moment one war ended, another began, and if you tried to step away, the galaxy dragged you back. You walk through centuries as though they were a single corridor. You step from the Mandalorian Wars into the Jedi Civil War, and the wounds look the same. You step from the Sith Triumvirate into the Emperor's shadow, and the faces blur together. You step from the fall of one republic into the rise of another, and you realize you cannot tell where one war ends and another begins. They bleed into each other. Like spilled ink, staining everything. The galaxy forgets. That is its tragedy. Time passes, and the horrors of war turn into stories. Stories turn into myths. Myths turn into dust. Children laugh in streets rebuilt over the bones of those who came before. Merchants trade in marketplaces where soldiers once bled. Senators argue in chambers rebuilt on ruins left by their predecessors, and they tell themselves this time will be different. This time will last. This time, peace will hold. But you know better. The Force remembers, even when mortals forget. The scars remain, invisible but deep, waiting to be torn open again. You wonder if the Force itself is at fault, if it hungers for balance so deeply that it cannot allow peace to remain. Light rises, darkness rises to meet it. Darkness grows, light grows to oppose it. Over and over, an eternal pendulum swinging across history. You wonder if free will matters at all, or if you are all just pieces in a game that was rigged before it began. And yet, you also feel the moments of choice. The moments when one life changes everything. Revan standing at the edge of war. The exile choosing to return to the galaxy. Malak betraying his master. Traya whispering her truths to her student. Again and again, individuals carving ripples in a river that feels too vast to change. Perhaps that is the cruelest truth. You cannot stop the river, but you can decide how you drown. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because you carried the weight of all of it, every scream in every war, every betrayal, every sacrifice. You stood in the eye of storms that never ended, telling yourself it mattered, that it had to matter, that if you held the line just a little longer, maybe the galaxy would learn. But it never did. It never does. And still, you held the line anyway. The galaxy is tired. You can feel it. Civilizations that once sang with wonder now hum with fatigue. Temples stand half empty. Armies march without conviction. Fleets gather not with pride, but with dread. And yet, the wars continue, as if momentum alone cannot be stopped. Endless. You taste blood and ash. You smell ozone from endless sabers clashing. You hear the drums of conquest echoing not from one battle, but from all battles. And you understand. This is not history. This is fate. This is the shape of the galaxy carved into the bones of stars. But even as despair presses against you, there is something else. A flicker, a spark. The same spark that has carried the Jedi across centuries, that has survived Sith betrayal, Mandalorian fire, and Republic collapse. Hope. Fragile, foolish, necessary. The belief that even if the war is endless, the fight still matters. The belief that even if peace never lasts, the act of reaching for it is worth the pain. And so, you keep walking. Through centuries, through fire, through betrayal, through ruin. You walk because the galaxy demands it. You walk because someone must. You walk because, endless or not, the war is not yet done. That's why it sucked to be a Jedi. Because the war never ended, it only changed faces, and if you looked too closely, you realized the truth. Every enemy was just another reflection. Jedi and Sith, Sith and Jedi. Mirrors facing mirrors, light chasing shadow, shadow chasing light, until the end of time. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you wonder what comes next. Another empire? Another betrayal? Another war? The pattern has not broken yet, and as long as it continues, the galaxy will burn. But then, you feel something. A tremor, a shift. Small, subtle, but real. The future is not written, not entirely. And maybe, just maybe, the endless war is not truly endless, or maybe the worst has yet to come.